my room and I don't really do it to you. And would you look at that? We're back. Welcome back, boys. We're a little late today. Little late today. We're a little late today, a little late today, a little late today, a little late today. We're a little late today, and I'm playing Slay the Spire. I am playing Slay the Spire until somebody joins my chat and says something in the chat. Hey, what's up, Fry Scream? Who is that again? Were you the one we were talking? You were the one we were talking to on Friday, yeah? In the Discord. How you doing, brother? How you doing? Let me get that Discord open in case you want to join. Should really figure out how to make like a cool server that everyone can join, just be a part of. That'd be nice, right? Figure out some Discord work. Hell yeah, bro. Welcome back, my man. Welcome back. How was your weekend? Anything fun? Well, not weekend. We talked on Monday. My days are so like weird. I just forget what day it is all the time. I think we talked on Monday. Okay. Server boost. What does that mean? Things are a little quiet in the chat without Comic Brandon. By the way, if you want to hop in this Discord, feel free. Let me just throw that in there. Yeah, things are good. Did some stand-up comedy last night. Went well. Just working on new material, new set. What was I doing? Yeah, I think that's all. Oh yeah, I recorded a podcast with a friend. So I wasn't streaming yesterday, unfortunately, even though I wanted to. But here we are. Back at it. Back at it indeed. Where are you at in life? Are you in college or high school or Jack Kerouac style, just traveling around? Or what's the life in the day of? No, your name wasn't Blake. That was someone else. Or was it Blake? I don't remember exactly. Let's see. How do people make like a Discord server so cool? Edit server profile. How about that? You can add your pronouns. Cool. Taking a break after high school. That's a good idea. I went right into college after high school. Ooh, moral philosophy. That'd be cool. That'd be great. Really interesting. I guess I wish I had studied more like formal philosophy. I was a theology major in college. But I went to college directly out of high school, and I think that was a mistake. I went for 1 year. I was like a film studies. I was like, I'm gonna be a director. I'm gonna be a director. I'm gonna hang out with P Diddy. I'm glad I didn't go that route. But then after a year, I was like, this is horseshit. I don't know what's going on here. I'm not learning nothing. I don't know what I want to do. So I took a year off after my first year. Then I came back to college and studied theology. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, film and TV. Is that the most useless degree? I used to joke that theology was the most useless degree. Film and TV, it is completely useless because like they don't teach you anything. You just watch Disney movies, literally. That was like a whole class. I was watching fucking Cars. Watch Cars and write an essay. Why are all the cars gay? That would be one of the things. One of the things we had to watch was Trolls World Tour. And then I had to write an essay about why all the trolls are gay. Oh, your degree is moral philosophy, yeah. I don't think that's useless. Honestly, I joke about theology and stuff being useless because, like, you can't go work at Oracle. You can't go work at, like, Apple with a theology degree. Although, who knows these days? You never know. But really, moral philosophy, theology, these are things that are way more useful than, like, a lot of the stuff you're going to learn in college. Pretty much any humanities degree. Because it teaches you how to live your life, you know? Oh, art and philosophy are yours. Again, it's like useless, but actually probably the most useful possible thing to study. Doesn't get more useful than that. It's a hell of a lot more useful than like a business degree, I think, unless you really, really are hell bent on being like an entrepreneur, which is pretty cool. I'd like to be an entrepreneur. Oh, here you are. What's up, brother? What's up, my man?
Hey, good to
How you doing?
be streaming again. Good
Hell,
night.
hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. Let me can you see me in the Discord there if I do that?
No, I can't see you. It's just
Never
your
know how
logo.
these things work.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm
Um,
fine. Just
yeah, just
talking anyway.
talking. Well, cool,
But
man.
yeah,
Yeah. What do you think about that? I think there's a lot of useless degrees out there. Um, but I think like it's sneaky to it's a joke that I used to say that like theology is like a useless degree. Like I'm not going to be able to do anything with that. But really it is like the most centering. It's like
important.
better for
Right,
yourself for your mind really than like making money
right,
per
right.
se.
Because when you think about it, it's like it's useless in the sense that it kind of won't make you any money unless you're very lucky, but
Right.
it's some of the most important things. I'd say philosophy, theology are the most important things to
Yeah.
study. Even though it's not something that's going to, bring in an income or anything. It's
Right.
something you want to understand how other people view the world, how you should view the world. You know,
Totally.
you can completely change your morals when you learn just why other people believe in what they believe in and if it
Totally.
aligns with your beliefs. And the thing about philosophy as well is we all have these ideas in our heads and these ways that we see other people and ourselves, and sometimes we're not able to formulate them. And when you study like different philosophers and just people that are able to put your thoughts into the most like eloquent
Right.
way possible to explain
Right.
it,
Yeah.
like you can really be like, oh yeah, that's what I've been trying to figure out. And even though it's already a part of like what you believe,
Uh-huh.
it's really formulated better when you're able to see it in that sense, in that light.
Totally, totally, and it's just like learning how to you learn. I mean, that's a good point. That like maybe some expression that you have or some like latent thought that you can't put into words might just like perfectly be described by some philosopher or someone you're studying in school, but then you also learn through that process like how to make your thoughts translatable and relevant to other people, which I think applies to any job, even in terms of like making money. Back to the making money, it's like in terms of
Right.
any job, that's if you can present your ideas in a like succinct and clear way, then that's gonna pretty much work for any career, except for like auto mechanic maybe, I don't know. But like, I mean, there's a few things, doctor, I don't know, but
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, I feel like even when you do study philosophy in that way, you learn about the different archetypes of people that you're going to be working with,
true.
people that you'll have to interact with, how you should interact with them. If you know what I
Totally.
mean, like
Totally.
there's some people that I don't know, like in business and sales, like it's a lot of mind tricks basically. It's a lot of
Yep.
knowing what's the right thing to say and the right way to say it
Totally.
based on the person that you're speaking with.
Welcome, American M.
Yeah.
And what's up, brother? What was remind me of your guys' two names again one more time.
I'm
I know it.
Ben
Okay,
from Chicago.
Ben from
Ben.
Chicago, right? And then it's Blake is American M,
Yeah,
right? That's right. Okay, that's what I
that's
thought.
me.
Well, welcome, guys. Do you guys have any sort of theological question
Yes.
or just
Just give me a
statement or
second. Trying to
for sure?
get
Because
this
I've got something
verified.
interesting. If we don't have anything, we can talk about the slavery in the Bible concept, which I think I
Yes,
just
I
spent
was
some
going to
time
bring
learning
up.
about.
I was going to bring up Gnosticism. Have you heard about the
Oh,
Gnostic
sure. Let's
Christians?
get into it. Yeah, Gnosticism. Cool.
And
Cool.
I was gonna make a case why I think Gnosticism would make
Protestants.
more sense.
Why it makes more sense than
Uh,
normal or traditional Christianity.
yes.
Wait, do you mean like
Yeah.
fundamentalism versus Gnosticism? Kind of,
I mean,
because the
like,
Gnostics are kind of more of like a loose, more of kind of like a
yeah, yeah,
more
yeah.
pagan version of Christianity.
I mean, like the Valentinians and like the
Yeah.
idea. Well, I'll get into it. Let me get this. Y'all can talk. I'm gonna get this verified, and then I'll join in when I'm
Sure,
ready. I'll
sure,
let you know.
sure. Yeah, the Gnostics are interesting.
What?
So let's premise it with what I know, and then maybe you can give what you know, Ben. But basically, what I know about them is that they start to crop up maybe in the 100 years after, 100 to 200 years after the crucifixion of Christ, and they have this philosophy where of gnosis, that like there's some sort of hidden knowledge that's been completely hidden, utterly hidden from humanity, and that there has been some sort of, I don't know if this is all of them, but that there was some sort of like demiurge, like an evil god that created our material realm, right?
Right.
And then and he is like the god of the Old Testament, and then the real god is some sort of unknowable like good guy or something, and the point
Yep.
of like existence is to break out of the demiurge's like clutches and receive true gnosis. That's my understanding of Gnosticism. What, do you have
Yeah, and
any points to add
I
on to
can
that?
see from our last conversation, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
I'm well tuned with the problem of suffering,
Yeah.
and I think that yeah, that would be explainable if there was an evil God that
Mm-hmm.
the reason he created the universe, is just to mess with us or torture us in some sort of way, which
Right,
is
right,
a
right.
horrible reality to accept, and it's not a God worthy of worship. That's one of the reasons why I don't really believe. Well, the reason I don't believe in a God because there's no evidence, but I don't really believe he would be worth worshiping if he didn't have
If
some
he
very
did
good
exist.
reasons. Like, yeah, I definitely have some things to say to him. Some
Sure.
questions to ask him if he did exist, and I did end up coming face to face with him. But
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. I mean, so that's interesting. I mean, again, I still don't see why. Like, so is it your intuition or your belief that, okay, so the way that I put it is for the problem of suffering, if there is a possible answer, like if there is
yeah,
a single possible answer, then obviously God will be able to think of that or other ones that I can't even think of that don't seem possible to me or haven't even been can't enter into my conception. But so it's
right.
like I already have one possible answer, and tell me where this falls apart for you, because I'm curious. Which is the possible answer, which God could obviously do if it's possible, is that some kind of greater good could be made out of any amount of suffering or any amount of evil in an eternal afterlife, in his eternal presence. So I don't see
Mm.
why he wouldn't do that, why that can't be the case, or why that
Yeah.
makes him
Yeah,
even
you don't know
improbable.
why there isn't an answer that we can't explain. But
Yeah.
I also don't I feel like there's some very easy um I mean it's very easy for God to create a world where there is no suffering whatsoever, you know.
But
Like and
not
he
with people
did
that have free will.
within the
How do you create a world with no
in
suffering where
heaven
people
you
have
have no
free
free
will?
will then.
What's that?
In heaven you have no free will, and
No, I
apparently
think you
that's
do.
the most blissful place blissful realm you can
Yeah, I
exist on.
wouldn't be
And
so sure that you
you
have no.
believe that it's real. I'm assuming you believe heaven's real, but he could
Yeah.
have created a perfect utopia on earth, just like
Well, he
heaven,
did,
and
didn't he? He did. That was the Garden of Eden, wasn't it?
well, he didn't have to, create Satan
Yeah,
in the
but
Garden of
it's
Eden.
just the same. It's
Bruno.
just you're just kicking the can back down the road because you still can't answer the question, or you still haven't answered the question of maybe you can, but you haven't. Is free will intrinsically good? Is that something God would like to give to us?
Well, giving us an option of, like tempting us toward doing terrible things to other people in order to gain our own pleasure. I think that that's a terrible thing. I think it's good to create a universe where there is no suffering. There is where God. I mean, He's all
But
powerful.
what
He
would be
could
the
give us
difference?
all.
Well, then
He,
they would be
he
creating nothing. That's just what he already had.
well, He could give us a perfect understanding of truth and what is good, and if it's righteous, what is good and perfect, then we would all agree with it. And if not, then they why would we turn away from it? I mean,
So,
we have
but
so many angels
yeah,
that turned away from God and they had perfect understanding of everything.
right.
Why would they do so? If they had this higher level of consciousness,
Yeah.
like you're saying, all the answers that he would have that we don't have, the angels do have, and
Hmm.
yet like half of them turned away from
Yeah.
God. So there must be something about God's nature um,
Well, it's
that's just
pride, right? It's
intrinsically
pride.
evil. And then when we go talk about Gnosticism, that would make sense why some of these angels have this perfect understanding, but they have their own judgment and free will where they can choose, wait, this is almost like a dictatorship. This isn't a very good God that we should be obeying. And of course, they turn against him.
Hello, brother. Who's this? We got someone else in the chat here.
No, this is me.
Oh, this is you. You're back. Oh, you're blue now. Cool.
Yeah, I'm back.
Well, there's real quick. You made the point that there's no free will in heaven. I disagree. I think there's 100% free will in heaven.
No, I do think so. There is, but
Okay.
I'm thinking that the angels have a perfect understanding of what is right and what is just, what is true, and yet half of them turn away from God. And
But just because you
they're-
understand something to be right and just and true doesn't mean you cannot choose something that is unjust, unright, and untrue. So, for instance, if Satan is created as the most powerful angel, and he can see that, damn, obviously God created me, and I know He's good and just and right and whatever, but I'm better than everything else. So he gets this pride, and then he goes against God. And then there's a description in the Bible that the fall was as quick as a lightning flash. So the second that Satan thought that he could even hold a candle to God, it's immediate. The entire fall of the creation happens. When the first creature falls, creation becomes violent, and because of that. But anyway, so the point being, it's like God. I don't see how this is mutually exclusive because there's this like implicit assumption that God created Satan to fall or to do anything evil or to do anything wrong. But it's like, no, God only knows how to create good things. And one of the good things, one of the best things, is freedom of choice and freedom of will, because there's no love without freedom of will. So if you have true freedom of will, then you can actually choose to do evil despite what God wants you to do.
well, not in heaven though.
Why not?
I would
Okay, let's hear what. Let's jump to our other friend here, Blake.
I would argue that God created the universe, right, and everything in it. Therefore, He must have known about evil, and He technically, if it exists, He must have created it. And
It did.
so I remember that I
I don't
was
know about that.
arguing with you
So if
last
I create
time.
a porno, if I draw a graphic, horrible porno and make it as bad as you can possibly think, like of the worst possible nature, God create. Is it fair? Is it reasonable to say God created that? No, I mean my sick, twisted mind. God created me to be good and righteous and just, but then in my sick, twisted mind, I create something like that. I don't see how we can kick the can all the way back to God on that, just because He gives me the freedom of will. Because the other
Yes,
option
but
is that He gives me no freedom, so then I don't get to do anything, and in fact, I'm not
yeah,
even created.
okay. Well, two things. If you we can't compare you to an all-powerful, omniscient,
No,
all-loving God. And so, if you do some, for example, would you say that this might be a terrible like thing to compare it to, but
yeah.
would you say that Oppenheimer, since he created the nuke, he was responsible for the millions of deaths that in Japan?
I have a hilarious take on it. I hate Oppenheimer. I find him to be the most arrogant, prideful douche of any
Let's just,
scientist in history.
but
But
yeah,
that's why, because he takes credit for it in this weird way, quoting a Hindu scripture, right, the Bhagavad Gita,
yeah.
where he goes, "I
Well,
am become death, destroyer of worlds," forget leaving out that the very next line is also, "But I'm also a butterfly and a flower," and all these nice things. So he sort of like half quotes a scripture to say that he is some sort of god of death, when actually thousands of scientists had been working. It's almost like way more a force of history. And then there's the funny thing in the movie and in history where Truman goes like, "You're not the Merchant of Death, I am, motherfucker," which is at least closer to the truth. So anyway, I would say
One
Oppenheimer
sec,
is
one sec.
no, not
well, I
personally
can
responsible
reorient it.
yeah.
The people who worked on the atomic bombs are they do they have the blood of all the people that were nuked on their hands for creating the atomic bomb?
I'm not sure. I don't. I'm inclined to say no, that they don't. Um,
I mean, I feel
what's your intuition about that? I haven't thought about that
okay.
too
Well,
deeply, but let's hear what you think. Why
where
are
I'm
they
going,
morally responsible for how the United States government chooses to use their research and their bomb making efforts? The inevitability of it, the fact that this was the only way, this was the direction that both sides are going to end the war. So it's the only option. We have to either make it or die, right? Or so who takes the actual brunt of the blame for the atomic bomb, the horror of that? I'm gonna have to kick it back to Satan, honestly. That the 20th century is this spiritual battle. It's the darkest time possibly in human history, but certainly within something close to our lifetime. So
Let me
there's so
chime in
many
for a
dark
sec.
forces at work here. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
okay.
Let me chime in for a sec.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna head out and then I'm gonna join the stream in like an hour. I gotta
Cool,
do
bro.
something.
All right,
All
peace,
right.
brother. See ya.
Yeah, man. Okay. So where I'm going with this is
Yep.
that Oppenheimer, the whole group of scientists knew they were creating a big bomb
Yep.
during the time of World War II.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they were all smart enough to figure out why they were creating a big bomb, the
I
biggest
know. I
bomb ever
think they knew
made.
why. Yeah.
And so I would say that they knew what they were doing and they knew that it would be used to kill them. So I think most people would be like, yeah, it was for the greater good, but it had to be done, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
and
Something
so
like that. Yeah.
in saying that, they do have that responsibility. I
Okay.
think that was kind of the point of the movie. It's like, oh, this huge burden that he has to carry because he killed like hundreds of thousands of people. Anyway, the reason why
Yeah.
I say that is because God created the world just like they created the nuke, but God knew the outcome, like they knew the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
where the suffering would be and all, you know. And we can argue that, okay, did God create the devil to do this?
Yeah.
I would say yes. I think I'm hearing that you would say no. So if that's something you would go into,
Yeah.
but
Well, we can go into that, but
because
we also, again, you're comparing. Well, so you said like I shouldn't compare my knowledge to God's, and I agree with you. But also, we can't compare the nuclear scientists, the way that they knew it was going to happen, to God's knowledge. So whatever. So God's knowledge is complete. So not only does he know that Satan is going to fall, he knows what happens after Satan falls and what happens after that and that and that to the end of time. So he knows that the ultimately the fall leads to something much much greater. Like for instance, the fact that you and I can sit here, and so then God doesn't just get to hang out with his angels; he gets to hang out with you and me too, and all his angels, and his son Jesus Christ, who has to then be sent So there is a theodicy in that. It's a deep one, so I don't expect you to accept it, that the fall of Adam was a good thing because we get Christ out of it. And Christ is so good. It's like so perfect that if we never had the fall and we never got him, it would be more worth it to fall just to get him. So something along those lines. So God he sees the fall and he's tortured by it. He suffers evil in the world. He doesn't like that. He hates it. It hurts his heart, right? But he knows what happens after the suffering, which is eternal peace and joy and love with all these creatures whom he loves that he could not have had without the fall, so to speak. Because you're saying like, oh, why didn't he just stay in heaven forever and not create anything, or maybe create things, but they don't have free will, so they're essentially just him. Like, so it's because he loves multiplicity. He loves like different things.
Yeah. I'm not saying why didn't he create anything. I just kind of find it funny that the way you describe that, like God's tortured by what, like, but he knows at the end. That's quite literally like human thought. Like that, you could
Right.
literally say that about Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could quite literally say the exact same thing.
No, I know that's
Which,
an anthropomorphization. Obviously, God isn't tortured literally in any way,
I know,
but
I know.
we get the sense through Scripture and through Jesus that he's offended by sin. He doesn't like he's not happy that people fell, and you even see that in the story. He's like, "You did what? You ate that fruit, the one thing I told you not to do," and he's like, he hates it. He does not want to kick these people out of the garden, but he's just and he's righteous, so he has to.
But don't you think that sounds very human-like? And
yeah,
what
I mean,
by
we're
is,
created
like,
in his image, so I think it's fair to. It's not like I can say like God is like a human in any like substantial way, but I think we would see shadows of God's emotion and his personality on human faces, in human hearts, like all over the place.
Oh, I understand, but what I'm saying is like, we wouldn't expect an all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, and omniscient God to act like a human who doesn't have any of those things.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't either.
And when we're talking about like, okay, well, he created this evil, and well, I know you're not going to want to say, oh, he created the evil, so let's not even say that.
Well, I understand the chain of logic. I think it breaks down if we get into it, but I can accept for the sake of argument that God created evil. I mean, you can see already how simplistic that is, but okay, fine. God created evil. Okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's even a verse where he basically says he's the God of
yes,
good.
he takes credit. That's an important thing. He does take responsibility for everything. So that's why I'm okay with conceding. It's fair to say God at least takes responsibility for evil. Okay.
Okay. All right. And that's why, like, I don't think he's all good, because an all good God wouldn't be able to create evil.
Okay.
I think that on its own is kind of a contradiction, but you can go into that.
I think that's the only thing an all good God, in a weird way, could create. Okay, so hear me out here. I'm not saying like, so there's you ever heard of Norm Macdonald, stand-up comedian?
No.
Okay, he's one of the best stand-up comedians of all time. You absolutely should look him up. He just died recently, like 5 years ago or something like that. He's one of the greatest stand-ups. Anyway, so he had cancer for like 20 years and didn't tell anybody. And he was so funny, and he always had this like sort of dark, I don't know, like predilection. Like he just kind of was attracted to these like Dostoevsky novels and like these dark sort of like philosophical concepts. And one of the things he said, so imagine that there's an all good God. He's all good, but he wants to create something. Well, if he's already completely full, he has all the qualities of goodness. Everything that's good, he is. Well, what is there else to create? What is left to even differentiate from himself? So if you're going to create something, it has to be separate from yourself. It has to be different from yourself. And the only thing different than a purely good, all good God is evil. So again, that's going to even help you. That's going to make you go, well, so he did create evil. So he is this evil guy. No, he's all good.
No,
and he wants to create, right?
What it lends to me, I'm not going to go straight into that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's just beating the dead horse.
Sure.
What I get out of that is like, so can a good man do evil? That's kind of
Yes.
the question I derive from that. And I agree with you.
Absolutely.
I think the answer is yes. And
Yeah.
so that kind of makes me have to think about that and like have
Yeah.
to go back and think about that. I mean, because you bring up a good point. I guess the logic goes back to, can a good man do evil?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the question is yes,
Mm-hmm.
as long as there's a good outcome to that evil. But then that
Right.
brings me back to do the ends justify the means, and is that really a good
Mm.
thing? Kind of like the Soviet Union, right? When they were
Yeah.
at war with the Nazis and they were just sending body after body after body, and they didn't care what the end was.
Yep.
So they just putting people in the meat grinder. By the end of it, they lost like 30 million people.
Right. I think,
But
you
the
know, I
ends
have
just
this weird intuition, and maybe I don't want to like say this 100%, but it kind of, this just popped in my head. It seems like the ends could justify the means only if you are omniscient. So if you actually know what the ends are and you actually know how to manage the means so that they don't step even 1 foot out of line in regards to like how good the end is. So like for humans, absolutely not. Ends never justify the means. We just aren't omniscient. But for
and I
God,
think that's
maybe they do. I'm not
I
sure.
think it's very interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And a
So
good
didn't you
question.
have? Did you bring something else? I can't remember when you came in. You said you brought
Yeah, I was just about to ask about
yeah
to go into the Gnostic stuff, dude. I
the
think the
Gnostic stuff.
Gnostic
Yes, that'd
stuff.
be cool. I'm down. Let's do it. I was actually
And
hoping that
so
we. Oh, we got a Norm lover in the chat. Hell yeah, man. Welcome, Jackson. Hell yeah.
Gnostic Christianity, dude.
Mhm.
Um, it makes way more sense with
Okay.
the
A
Old
lot of people
Testament
are.
and
I
the.
think Alex O'Connor himself is very attracted to Gnostic
It is a
concepts.
very attractive thing when you look into
It
it. It
is.
is.
Yeah.
It like makes sense. And like, do you understand the concept with the Old Testament, the
Well,
New and Gnostic?
let's talk about it because I have a basic understanding, and I know that there's so many different Gnostic sort of schools and a couple and different like places it comes out of. So let me lay out my basic understanding of Gnosticism, and you tell me if you think there needs to be amended or changed or added. So basically, what I understand the Gnostic belief to be is that the purpose of like spiritual seeking or whatever it is for gnosis, Gnosis, which is knowledge of some sort of like hidden truth. It's like completely hidden truth from humanity. You need gnosis in order to understand it, to live a good life or go to heaven or whatever they believe. I'm not exactly sure. And so what they would say is that the true story, the creation story, or the cosmology of the universe is that a demiurge, or otherwise, in other words, an evil god who rules the material realm, basically has us trapped in this like kind of slave-like relationship with him, where we're like confined to our bodies and physicality, and we interact with like material, and we can only like see material and stuff like that. And so this demiurge, in order to like have true gnosis and to sort of transcend the chains of our evil existence, is to realize that that is an illusion, that reality is evil, materiality is evil, and that the only good thing is like I don't know, high spirituality or high consciousness or something like that. Does that sound? It does
So
sound like
that's
discount Buddhism. That's right, Jackson.
well, well,
That's right.
it is literally like Christian Buddhism. But let me
It is,
explain
yeah.
in
Yep.
sense. So we have the pleroma, right? Which is like, or God is kind of like in this sense is like unknowable. His characteristics are unknowable. So remember when I
Hmm.
was telling you about deism, where like
Hmm.
there's a God, but we don't know anything
But he
about
just
him. We
doesn't
could
care. Yeah, he
we
created it
could
all
never
and then he
know.
just like
I
effed
wouldn't
off.
say that he doesn't care in this sense, but
Hmm.
there's nothing we could know about him, right? Because
Right.
he's
Okay.
literally God. So
Gotcha.
let's say that, and then we have the um think of like the spirit, right? There's a spirit.
Hmm.
It starts with a B. It's like a weird name, and then you have
Yep.
like the Christ.
Yep.
All right, and then under them you have like a bunch of different entities almost
Okay.
that derive from the unknown one, I guess you
Y-
can call them,
Gotcha.
and like it's like wisdom, love, all these different virtues, right?
Sure. Sure.
All these
Sure.
different things.
The
So
metaphysic goods or whatever. Yeah.
that's the pleroma, right? So
Yeah.
we're like, I guess all that. So there was wisdom, which is seen as a female, right?
Uh huh.
Wisdom,
Sophia. Yeah.
basically. So okay, so yeah, you know this. Sophia, like has a kid, basically. Like
Okay.
goes on to her own will, kind of gets out of the pleroma,
Yep.
gives birth to her own thing when she's not supposed to,
Right.
and creates this deformed, like very unnatural deity.
Yep.
And so that would be the demiurge. And
The
so she
demiurge. Right.
hides this by basically throwing him outside the pleroma, and like this demiurge is by himself because it's outside.
Right.
He thinks that he's the only god, and he's blind,
Yep.
and
Yep.
he's pretty evil. And so
Yep.
he basically creates these archons.
Yep. The
Think of them like
archons. Right.
demons,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
they siphon or take a bit of divine energy from the
Uh-huh.
pleroma
Yep.
and create their own universe.
Okay.
And that is the universe we live in.
Gotcha.
And so the
Gotcha.
basics is like the God of the Old Testament is this demiurge. And that's
Yep.
why we see this God condone slavery. That's why we see him commit genocides.
Got
That's
you.
why the God of the Old Testament is, I know you're going to disagree with me, but
Yeah.
almost evil. Like he does a lot of
Totally.
questionable things.
Yep.
And so that is the demiurge. And the Christ,
Mhm.
the Christ basically comes to help us
Yep.
in a sense.
Okay. Do you want me
And
to point out where this breaks down on a couple levels?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Okay. So my view of it is that, let me just get our friend back in
By
here.
the way, I'm
visually.
not a Gnostic. I don't
Right,
believe
right.
in
No,
this.
but it is interesting, and it is it
Right.
does have a seemingly it seemingly has an answer to the problem of evil, like kind of. But so this is where it breaks down for me, because the statement is that the God of the old the crucial part is that the God of the Old Testament is this like demiurge, and that the Christ figure comes, and this is the real God. But what do you do about the fact that the actual historical Christ that we see in history is in love with the God of the Old Testament and claims to be the God of the Old Testament and claims to be his son and claims to be the fulfillment of the law and the prophets? So if this were true, and then the Christ figure were the actual like good savior God or whatever, we would expect him to at least like reprimand the God of the Old Testament or something like that, instead of display like filial piety to him, calling him Abba, Father, things like that. Not to mention that the Hebrew conception, the ancient Hebrew conception of the God that they're describing, is a non-dual God. So one that, like, by definition, is in this so-called pleroma, or actually even higher than the pleroma, like something that's even more unknowable than that. So to say that the ancient Hebrews were worshiping a pagan god, which is what you described, the demiurge. So by pagan god, I mean like a god who is competitive with other matter in the universe, like exists in the universe, is affected by like other archons or gods or things like that. That's just not what the Hebrews. That's not how they conceived of the God that they were worshiping. They conceived of the one that was uncaused, Alpha and Omega, without beginning, without end. So it's like it's a fun fanfic from like the 200s, I think. Whenever these ideas start to pop up, but it's totally pagan, and it totally contradicts. Like if they want to incorporate Christ into this like cosmology, then they have to basically ignore everything he said and all the respect and credit that he gives to the Old Testament God, right?
Yeah.
I was gonna say something too, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Jump in.
I mean, my whole thing is just, I mean, are you just trying to say, because I know you're not a Gnosticist, you're just trying to say hypothetically it's more plausible than like modern Christianity or Catholicism? Because I think it still has the presupposition that God exists, and that the God that does exist is the one that correlates with the religion that we're referring to, like whether it's Christianity, Islam.
So what I was saying, what I'm saying is that, yeah, I'm not a Gnosticist, but I think that it makes more sense of the Old Testament and the Old Testament being that is called God, because he's so much more violent and jealous, and
Yeah.
shows a lot of these dark emotions.
Yep.
And in the New Testament, it's nothing like that, right? And so that's made sense because the God of the Old Testament is this demiurge who, for example, I'll answer some of the questions that you raised. Why does Jesus speak good, or is like almost like saying like the Old Testament God? Well, what I believe the Gnostics would say is that the Jesus is when he's talking about my Father, Abba, all this stuff. He's talking about the unknowable one, the pleroma in the pleroma, right? He's not
Right.
talking about the demiurge. He's talking about the one that he comes from, which is the unknowable.
Right, but he's a
And
first century Jew, so that is the common Jewish conception. So any time that the Jews are talking about that God, they're talking about the unknowable one.
yeah, but what I'm saying is, so it gets a lot more complicated than that because,
Hmm.
and in the Gnostic way is like that the demiurge is very tricky, right? Or at least his right hand man, which would be called Satan, is
Okay.
tricky.
Yeah.
So he subverts these people. So these people think that they're worshiping, the Jews think they're worshiping the unknowable one, but they're actually worshiping the demiurge. That's the thing, is that
Hmm.
the God that the Jews worship in the Old Testament is the demiurge. They don't
Right.
know. They call him the unknowable one. They call him these things, but he's actually the demiurge. And that's why Jesus comes back, is because he's saying, hey, that's not the right God. That's not the one you think it is, basically.
Yeah.
And because we're trapped here because of the demiurge, because we're kind of like his playthings.
Right.
And so the Christ is trying to come back and from the Gnostics' point of view, crucifixion doesn't even mean anything. Like it's not important in any aspect. It's that Jesus is here to teach us knowledge.
Yeah,
That's the
I
whole
think the
thing.
Gnostics
That
believe
he's
that
here.
Jesus was like literally just because he's from this play Rome, he's not actually even a human. So when he's
He's
being
not physical.
crucified, he's not physical, right? So, which I mean is the same as not being. I mean, all humans are physical and as far as I understand. When
No.
he's being crucified, he's actually just like chilling. Like he's not experiencing any pain or any human
Well,
emotion or anything like that.
so for that perspective, from the Christ perspective, there's a couple of different Gnostics. So when I say Gnostic, it's
You'll
not this. So, what happened?
what's that? No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
When I say Gnostic, Gnostic is a very loose term, right? There's all these different Gnostics, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of different Gnostics that have a lot of different views. So the view I'm going with,
Hmm.
from the one that I hear the most, is that there's a popular Gnostic belief, I should say, is that there was a guy named Jesus Christ, right?
Hmm.
And when Jesus gets baptized, that's when the Christ comes into him. So
Yeah.
obviously in the old Bible, like his name isn't Jesus Christ. It's just
Right. Right.
Yeshua, right?
Right. Right.
So Yeshua gets baptized, and that's when the Christ comes into him.
Yeah.
And that's really when he becomes Jesus Christ. And so basically he's controlling this man throughout the Bible, New Testament. And then when he gets crucified, the Christ is outside the body and he's like laughing because
Right.
the demiurge and the people that he kind of controls and that Satan controls is
Yeah.
trying to kill him, but he can't touch him. So he's really laughing while this guy's suffering on the cross, and he's like laughing like you can't
Right.
hurt you. You
So
can't
for
hurt
me, so for me, this just like all pagan religions, basically just makes the story less powerful, right? So if all religions are sort of if all religions are basically a story about how to describe reality in the deepest way and in the most like mythical, archetypal, allegorical way, this is super like basic, like totally expected and offers none of the deep theology that Christianity offers, which is why I see the Gnostics having died out very quickly as opposed to Christianity, which keeps going. So I'll explain that why. So if Jesus is just this like spirit that came, or Christ came down into Yeshua and is just this like Gnostic sort of savior spirit, and he's sitting on the cross laughing, like, and he's sitting outside his body laughing at the devil because the devil doesn't have any real power. The devil doesn't think that he won or anything like that. Then what's the point of him even being on the cross? That just like cheapens the story. What's the point of him doing anything? Also, how
Yeah,
do
I
you
agree.
explain things where he says like, um, someone's like, "Oh, are you God?" in the Bible? I can't remember. Well, we can find the exact verse. He says, his response is in John. He goes, "Before Abraham was, I am." So this identification of himself with the specifically Abrahamic Old Testament God, what do you do with those? You just ignore them?
Um,
Because
well,
otherwise Jesus would have said, "You thought that I am was God, but I am the pleroma God. I am the unknowable one. I am." Jesus says, "No, I confirm the God that you know. I am that God."
well,
Um.
from what I
So
from what I understand, Jesus gave secret teachings to his
Yeah, that's what the
apostles,
Gnostics
right?
love to say.
So
Yeah,
he would give these out, stuff to the people, but then he would give secret knowledge to his apostles. And I'm not saying I believe this, but this is what they say.
I understand. Yeah,
And
and
like,
and I,
if
I
you
do
go into
understand that these not there's the book there's the Gospel of Judas and the
Judas,
Gospel of
yeah,
Thomas and the Gospel all these Gospels. So I've looked into a few of them. My
they're
understanding is
fake,
most of them
bro.
come about a couple hundred years later or over 100 years later, and then they also include. Wes Huff makes a great video about this. They also include theological things that you just wouldn't ever expect from either a first century Jew or a really early Christian that was actually a Christian or following the thing. So I definitely want to talk. Well, let's talk about Gnostics more. I do want to invite and welcome Jackson into our Discord. We have a Jackson here now. I think this is Beep Boop, if I remember correctly.
Hello.
How you doing, brother? How you doing?
Yeah, I
So
appreciate the welcome.
of
You guys
course,
can
man.
keep going. I'm totally fine just listening and being patient. You guys can just keep going with your
Cool,
conversation.
cool. Okay, so let's wrap up the
When you feel like it.
So
Yeah, we can
on
wrap
the
this up.
on the Gnostic point, I think it is really interesting. I think it is a fundamentally a less complex, even though it sounds more complex and it sounds like it makes more sense. I don't expect God to ever be that simple, really. The fact that it makes more sense doesn't make it a better explanation for the God of the Old Testament. So, one thing we could talk about is like basically the reason for this type of theology, or the reason that we're trying to cling to this or some other way, is it's another attempt to solve the problem of evil. So the question is the traditional answer to the problem of evil strong enough to support or like to be able to understand why God would quote unquote command the Israelites to slaughter the Amalekites, or
Yeah.
these laws about virgins and marrying them and you have to kill them or whatever it is. So are the traditional answers impossible? Because if they're just possible, then God will do them, because he can do anything that's possible, right? Within the tradition, like if there's a possible solution where God is good and he can allow for the slaughter of the Amalekites, then I'm going to take that over some like thousands of years later tradition that makes sense but is ultimately like a fanfic and leaves out a lot of the depth and the complexity of the New Testament, especially quotes like I am, before Abraham was I am, Jesus's actual identity as a Jewish rabbi, understanding what the Jews actually believed about their God. Because it's like to say that the Jews believed in this demiurge, it's like I know you would say like they thought they were praising the unknowable one, but if you're praising the unknowable one and you think it's the unknowable one, in what sense is it then a demiurge? Like if they have the conception of the unknowable one, and that's what they actually do worship, then the demiurge just seems like this kind of added on like fake thing where someone just said, hey, yeah, I know they thought they were praising exactly what they said they were praising, but really they were doing something different. And this is me 6,000 years later just saying that they did that.
Oh, wait. They don't know. So the demiurge created everything, including humanity,
Right,
not the unknowable one. The Jews would
right.
they would know nothing about the unknowable one. That's just a misconception. They worshipped the demiurge because that's literally the god of this universe in the Gnostic tradition. Like
Yeah,
that's just what I'm correcting, is because you said that they
right,
know the noble. They
right.
don't know the one. Their
Yeah.
god is the demiurge. That's who they
Yeah,
worship.
yeah, yeah.
But
Okay, it's
but
interesting. I get the power of the Gnostic argument. I mean, I've fallen into that as well and got really into the Gospel of Thomas and things like that, which
I
seem
mean
to imply this demiurge. So I get
the
it.
gospels themselves
Mhm.
are like come way after Jesus. So like in
Right.
that sense, and my biggest problem with Gnosticism,
Yeah.
to be completely honest, it
Yeah.
doesn't make a lot of sense in the sense that if we're human beings, how would any of the Gnostics have known about the pleroma
Right.
or
Right.
any of these
Yeah.
things, because that's completely outside of our universe,
Yeah.
and we really don't have much contact
Yeah.
with the thing of the pleroma besides the Christ. And if the Christ wasn't giving his true teachings out loud and only in private, how the hell did this become common knowledge? It just
Exactly.
doesn't make sense. It seems more
Yeah.
like somebody made a cool idea
Yeah.
And that's why it's interesting. That's why, Alex O'Connell, these people are interested in it because it sounds cool. But
Yep.
none of us actually believe that.
Right. I mean, yeah, again,
we can
it's like a
pick that
thing
apart
that's like,
pretty
okay, now incorporate that into your worldview. Existence is evil? I live in like a slave. I live on a plantation of like material slavery. It's like, okay, great. Because one of the things that Christianity offers you, I do believe it's the truth and the way and the life, but also it just offers you a way to live, like to be in the world and to have a worldview that is conducive to your well-being. But some kind of worldview where maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but your like fundamental statement is that I am a slave to materiality. I've been there. That's the entire New Age tradition. That's the whole New Age spirituality, religion, is like, life is illusory, man. You make your own way, and like you're a slave to the physical. So you got to break out of that, dude. You got to break out of the physical.
simulation, man.
Yeah, the simulation, dude. I mean, anything that denies like pretty much the most visceral part of your experience is not something that's I'd think, gonna be like conducive to you, beneficial to you on like the pragmatic front. So pragmatically, I think it falls apart as well.
So
But
I know
yeah.
you've been like looking, like you said, you've been looking into the whole why did the Bible have slavery, like the whole Old Testament problem of Christianity. So
Yeah.
is that what you want to go into, or do you want to
I
go
would
into
love
something
to.
else?
Yeah, I'd love to. I want to see what Jackson's up to and what Jackson
Yeah, that's
wants
true.
to talk about, and because we haven't talked to him yet. So let's hear it, Jackson. What you up to?
I mean, I don't want to completely derail your guys' conversation because what I
No.
would like to talk about is I would say pretty far off from what you're currently going through. So
Well, go
again, like
go for
I'm
it.
totally okay just like sitting here and listening for a while. If you guys just
No.
want to wrap up and keep going.
No, we're chilling. I think we kind of got to the end of the Gnostic train there. So let's jump into whatever you want, brother. Whatever it is, however far away.
Okay. How should I start? I suppose I suppose my greatest question to you as could I ask what sect of Christianity you are?
Yes, I'm a Protestant. Okay, so
Protestant, okay.
Episcopalian, but that's I might disagree with some of the views of the Episcopalian Church.
It's all good. I just
Yeah.
needed a general idea.
Gotcha.
So the first question would be oh Lord, I don't even know. I God, I should have thought of this a little harder before I.
No, you're chilling, brother. You're
Oh, I
chilling.
took up the mantle. The best way I can describe it is, like all throughout history, there's been like countless, like maybe thousands of religions.
Yeah.
Each one of them having their own basis of some sort of god or deistic entity, some sort of religious figure, anything. They have their leaders, their prophets, all this good stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And all these people, you can see a very consistent pattern of, depending on the location of where these religions originated, how they're represented in their beliefs. So, like,
Yeah.
You find like Plains Indians here in the United States.
Yep.
They didn't have any snake gods because snakes weren't really common in the
snakes.
plains,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
if you go to Japan and China, there are snake gods everywhere. They have like great sea
Right.
serpents, right? Like
Right.
it's very obvious that
Dragons and-
the
yep.
since you don't believe in those religions, I think you would probably agree with me that it's very obvious that their physical environment influenced their religious beliefs.
Yeah, and I'd say
Is that fair to
probably
say?
even the physical environment of Christianity at least maybe influences the beliefs, but at least influences the language and the images that you're going to use. So anyway.
Okay, so my question would lead to then, if you acknowledge that for thousands of religions all across the world, the physical circumstances by which they lived likely impacted a great deal of their religion. My question to you would be, how much do you think the physical circumstances of their lives impacted the writing of the Bible? And what percentage is like actual truth, and what percentage do you think is stuck in there because they just felt like sticking it in there because it was just kind of the way it was back then?
Yeah.
I could think of an example like Islam in their holy book. They claim that polygamy is like the
Yep.
way that it should be, but in the Bible that's obviously not true. And I think it's pretty apparent that the reason why polygamy is very common in Islam is because polygamy was true back when they wrote the Quran, and they just wanted to write it in because that's what they felt was true. So the question is to you, how much of the Bible do you think is just written in there because that's just kind of the way it was, and how much do you think is actual deistic truth?
Yeah. Okay, so I don't see these two things as being mutually exclusive per se. So I do believe everything in the Bible is true. Does that mean it's literally true? Not necessarily. Does that mean it's scientifically true? Not necessarily. Does that mean it's allegorically true, not necessarily, because like it could just not be an allegory, right? Like, or it could be a poem or something like that, right? Okay. So there's lots of different. The truth is a larger like field than scientific truth or something like that. So in terms of how do people's subjective experience of, say, where they live, their culture, their environment impact what's in the Bible, it might be 100%. It might be totally. But that doesn't mean that God didn't place them in that environment. God didn't send them the signs and the images through their culture and through their environment that then makes it end up in the Holy Scripture that we have today. Does that approach an answer to your question, or?
It does, but now it brings up a new question.
Okay.
If you can acknowledge that perhaps 100% of the Bible is entirely dependent on the circumstances by which the people of that time lived, I feel like
Well,
perhaps
okay,
now
yeah,
the standard response, if I ask a theist, what's your proof or evidence of God, it would almost always go to the Bible. But it seems that you've just relinquished that scapegoat. You've just acknowledged that it's possible that the Bible could be completely false, but I still believe in my God. So then the next question is, if you've gotten rid of the Bible as evidence for proposing the existence of a God, what do you put forth for the existence of a God?
Yeah,
if the Bible is,
actually,
untrustworthy.
I have 5 pillars of my sort of evidence or proof for God's existence, and I think only one of them actually relies on the Bible, which is the historicity of Jesus, and that's an important one to prove Christianity. So I do actually, I can look at the Bible as a historical text, the Gospels and the Old Testament, even though history is so weird in the ancient world. It's like, okay, is it historical or metaphorical? That it starts to get weird. But for the Gospels, that, like Luke especially, is a classic historical text that Ptolemy or Josephus or whatever would have verified and been proud of, to say, like, this is how you do history at the time. Okay, anyway, so that's the only proof that I would go to the Bible for to prove like Christianity in some way. But no, I rely on the cosmological argument, which is a philosophical argument that I don't know if you've heard of that one, the cosmological argument.
I might have heard it in passing. If
okay,
you want to
right. So
reiterate it for me, that'd be great.
It's super simple, and we can get into it, or we can keep going through some of the other ones, and just you tell me which one stands out to you, and we can get into them deeper. But so cosmological argument.
Just give me a succinct, just a quick little blurb, and then
quick
you can move
little
on,
blurb. All things that begin to exist have a cause. The universe began to premise 1. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, the universe has a cause. Okay, so then you get into like, well, what could possibly be the cause of space, time, and matter? You're already starting to deal with an entity that is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, and supremely powerful because it creates the universe. Okay, so there's that. Then we can get into that. That has nothing to do with the Bible, and that doesn't prove Christianity. That just proves
a God exists.
Evidence
Correct.
for theism or something like that, right? Or even deism, both of them. So then there's the fine-tuning argument, which I think is the most scientific and the most sort of perplexing to a materialist that they would have to explain, which is all the different, what are they called, constants and laws of the universe that have to be exactly what they are to within the most minuscule degree in order for not only just like life to exist on Earth, but for matter to be able to coalesce and be created at all. So for instance, the low entropy state at the beginning of the universe, Sir Roger Penrose, physicist, does a study in England. Turns out the chance of the specific conditions for the beginning of our universe to be what they were in order for like atoms to be able to create bonds in molecules is 1/10 to the 10 to the 123rd power. So that's like the exponent has 123 zeros. So then the actual number is just this impossible number. The probability of the universe happening randomly, so to speak, completely impossible, totally improbable, more so than anything you can even imagine. So that's the most scientific one. Then we go to the moral argument. This one you kind of have to agree that there is objective morality. And so we can get into that. But I don't see on atheism or on pure materialism or biology that there is any way to explain or any way to hold that there is objective morality in any sort of way. So objective morality being like under atheism and evolution and biology, where those are the only thing that lead to our creation. Well, I'm not going to trust the morality that evolution hands me because evolution is a violent and nasty process. And there are a lot of animals that do horrible things. So you can justify anything based on the animal kingdom. So like praying mantises eat their husband's head after they have sex with them. It's like, okay, so is that a moral way to like live my life as a human? Probably not. Whatever. But more importantly, what the atheist always says, and what I haven't had anybody say anything otherwise, although I think they could look at Sam Harris and try to create some sort of objective standard for morality from an atheist perspective. But what they usually say is, well, no, morality isn't objective. I don't know if you can see my my like image on Discord, by the way. I can try to figure that out if you can. But so like morality isn't quote unquote objective, it's intersubjective. So the subjective view of morality of all the humans on earth creates our so-called objective morality, that it's wrong to kill and murder and rape and steal and stuff like that. But the problem with that is there were periods of time on earth where the intersubjective view, the subjective view of all humans on earth, was that slavery was okay, that women shouldn't have any rights, that like all these things. So intersubjective morality does not work for me, and I haven't had a good explanation about how any other option exists under atheism and pure biology evolution. Then there's the historical argument for Jesus, which we could get into, but that's biblical, so we don't have to. And then also, then I would just bring it down to what actually got me and converted me was the experience of having a relationship with God. And so again, that's not an argument. That's just
It's a personal
experience that I believe anybody can have, and that many have had. But again, personal experience.
Can I state something on the cosmological argument?
Yes, please.
Unless you have something to say, Jackson.
No, you're all good. Go for it.
This is just a question. So the understanding is like, oh, this is like it's like crazy that this happened, pretty much, right? Like, oh my God, like such a crazy number.
Yeah.
I have to ask, like, is it that this thing is because God, or is it that kind of the same old story of humanity where we see something that we can't explain, or we don't know one of the laws of physics that we don't know yet, and that, for example, they see comets in the sky and they say that must be God, and then we figure out what that is, and or they see something crazy in nature, right? We could list 1,000 examples, and then they say that has to be God. That is an explanation of God, and that works until it's figured out, and then science comes in and says,
okay,
hate to ruin the party, guys. So do we think that this really is? And you could make that argument, but you could also make an argument saying, well, there might be some law of physics or physics, or there might be something to explain this, and we just haven't reached that. But when we do, then it will be explained. And I'm just saying there. I'm just stating.
Yeah, so this isn't a God of the gaps argument. I'm not saying because we don't know what that cause of the universe is, therefore it is God. The argument is more simple than that. It's just there must be a cause of the universe. Okay, what is the nature? What could possibly be the nature of that cause? And we can think about a few things logically. So if space hadn't existed yet, well, then the cause of space couldn't be space. Same with time, right? If time had not existed yet, then the cause of time could not be time. And then if matter hadn't existed yet, then the cause of matter could not be more matter. So then you start to get this image of a supernatural being. And so then the options are, well, okay, it could be that, or it could be some like impersonal multiverse machine chugging away and plugging away infinitely in the past in either direction. And that's fine, but that's not a more scientific answer than that it's God.
Yeah, I would simply say you can go 100 different ways with that. And
I'm not sure what other ways you can go other than it's whatever is the cause of space, time, and matter is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial.
But no. I'm not critiquing it. I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. I'm actually kind of agreeing with you.
Okay.
What I'm saying is like that's kind of like the argument, like what was before the Big Bang, right? Where did where did all this stuff come from?
Right.
You could say like 100 different things, and
sure.
So either one of them could be right? because it's unknown. That's something unknown.
Mhm.
We have no idea. We could figure out before the Big Bang that there was a scientific thing. It
Right.
happened. We have to admit that.
Right.
Or it could be God. So that's what I'm saying. Like there's no. I don't personally see a reason to like try to debate that
Okay.
because we honestly have no idea, and like I don't even think we have any evidence to assume either way. So both could be true. It's kind of like what is that? Something cat, Derringer's cat or something. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Schrodinger's cat, right? Like
Schrodinger's cat,
until
right?
we know
It
that the
could
cat
be.
is dead, it's both dead and alive or whatever.
Exactly. Until
Right.
we know what actually happened, it's both. To be
Yeah,
honest.
which is, but so then it's just funny that atheists are in my comments are, well, that's why I have 5 things. First of all, if my argument was just for the cosmological argument, not
I
only would
understand. That's
that
just
not prove Christianity, that would barely even prove theism or whatever, or be evidence for theism. But it's just funny when atheists say there's no evidence for God, and they state that as like an a priori like axiom. That's just how it is. There is no evidence for God, and then I lay out 5 things that are least evidential. Like these are
I
they
don't know if I'd
point
call it
towards something.
evidential.
These arguments point towards something, and then you can argue about what the correct conclusion of from the evidence is. But there's tons of evidence for God. You can't deny that fact. You just have to decide what you're going to take from that evidence, what that evidence means to you. And so for me, when I think of so you're saying there's like a million options at the like for the cause of the universe, and it just could be any of them arbitrarily. Well, like no. For instance, one of the options is that I created the universe. Me, Reese Folk, in 2024. I created the universe. That's an option. Well, no, of course
Thank you
it's
so
not an
much for
option.
your service.
What's that? Yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you
your
for your
service.
service.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like technically that's an option, but some things just don't make sense as possibilities.
Well, before we get carried,
Yeah.
before we like, what I really meant by that is two. There could be God or scientific, and what I meant by a million different ways is scientifically there's so many different ways it could have happened.
Okay.
But if we really want to condense it, there's only two, either
Right.
God or science.
So then what does scientific mean? Does that mean material? Like does that mean like physics, like matter?
Well, I mean, in some kind of scientific law or some kind of thing that we don't necessarily understand, some part of the natural universe we don't understand yet, because obviously we're still stuck to this planet. We haven't had
Yeah.
much advancement in real cosmological
Yeah.
science. So until we hit that, I could stand in this room and name 100 things, but I really don't know. And
Okay,
I don't
so
think
let me
humanity knows.
look. Can I do a little? I'm the worst artist in the world, but I'm gonna share my screen and see if I can.
Go ahead. I
Um,
can't see you on Discord.
I know you can't see my Discord. Let me see if you can see this though. Can you see this?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stream on the desktop so everyone can see it. Okay. So if it's like, okay, cool. Okay, so like this is the Big Bang, and this is the universe expanding out of the Big Bang, right? Like something like this.
Yep, that's about right.
And we're wondering, like, what is basically out here, right? Like, what is all this stuff
What's
out
behind
here? And when you say maybe it's something scientific, shit, how do I like into Zoom? Uh, shoot. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Ah, jeez.
Yeah, paint sucks. I hate
Paint
it.
sucks, dude. What the hell? What the actual hell? Okay. Let's do it like this. Forget all that. Okay. All right.
Yeah, just leave it up in the corner. We'll forget
Yeah, I'll
about
leave it up in the corner. Okay, so this is the Big Bang. And this is the observable universe that we see and love, and we're like somewhere around here or something, right? Okay, then we're wondering what's out here.
Yeah.
And if you're saying it's some sort of natural process, then this is what I'm seeing. And pretend that that's in the bounds of the line. And then you have to go, well, what's out here? And then you go, oh, well, it's some sort of other caused thing. It's some sort of other natural process. And you go ad infinitum, right?
I understand what
Are
you're
you
saying.
following what I'm saying right here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
What came before?
eventually,
What had to come first?
yeah,
I see what
eventually, the cosmological argument doesn't actually have to do with like physics and space and time, even though it sounds like it. It has to do with cause and effect. So tracing the line of causation all the way back to the first cause, the one that kicked off the whole thing. And that's how Aquinas is a little more eloquent than I am. St. Thomas Aquinas is more eloquent than me? What? But he is. And so he describes it more like that in whatever century that was that he was writing. That all things, there has to be a unmoved mover, an uncaused cause, a first cause. And that's what the cosmological argument points to. The fine tuning is where I would go to science or something like that, or physics. But for this, it's really more about cause and effect than like what is scientifically the answer to the start of the universe. Do you see?
Well, okay, I got a question. Let's
Yeah,
say
jump in.
hypothetically,
Jump in.
it's we physicists don't know yet. Let's say hypothetically, what you've drawn here is the correct interpretation, and this goes on ad infinitum.
Right.
The problem is that it effectively doesn't really mean anything because the reason why we draw the conical shape of our observable universe
Yeah.
is because we physically can't go beyond, we can't go backwards, like we
Right,
can't go before the Big Bang, and we
Sure.
likely never will be because that's not how physics works.
Yeah.
So even if we sought, even if this was true, that
Yeah.
that this repeated, infinite times in the past and it'll happen infinite times in the future, we'll never know that to be true, and so
Sure.
we can't really. How do I say that?
Well, but so it has two options, right? It either goes infinitely in the past and in the future on like some sort of timeline, right? Or it loops around, like how a lot of traditions have thought about it, like the Mayans or whatever. That like time is and even the Buddhists really, that time is like cyclical, and that it like loops around. So that's the only two ways that like a set of infinity can kind of be represented, in my view. Is that fair?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay, so, but it also, when I hear a cyclical universe, then you have this circle here, and like say this is where I'm at, and then I cause my son and this son and that son and this son. You do all the causes all the way around, and then you get back to here, and suddenly, an effect is its own cause. So that's just logically incoherent. An effect, so that they're not identical, or they are identical. Two different things are identical. Well, I don't. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but did you see, like just logically?
I
do you
get what
see
you're
how
saying.
that doesn't really make sense?
I'm just personally unmoved by this demonstration because it's too philosophical. It's not grounded
Gotcha.
in anything. Like
Gotcha.
we just have to make
Sort of like
philosophical
leaps.
assumptions and
Yeah,
guesses.
gotcha.
It's a bit of a
Yeah.
it's a bit of a bummer. I can totally understand the prospect of it being there. One of these iterations, or maybe our current iteration, was created by a creator.
Yeah.
The dilemma is just that like that's something we'll never know.
Right.
What I would
Okay.
say about
Gotcha.
that, I'm sorry, I lost internet.
No, go for it, man. Yeah. What you got?
But I completely understand what you're saying, and I don't know what Jackson actually said the exact same thing. What I was going to say, but like, to me, that goes into a whole stream of logic. Like, okay, we keep going back, and then let's say we get to God, but then who created God? If everything has to be created, then God must have been created.
No, that's not. That's actually a fallacy. That's not true. So the God that is, not only philosophically can we imagine a God that is uncreated, but like literally in the text from 6,000 years ago, which like we can barely imagine that now. How did they imagine this back then, 6,000, this deep philosophical concept? But the God has no beginning and no end, is uncreated. So imagine there's one thing in the universe and it's just God, but then he decides to create a bunch of other stuff. That doesn't have any sort of logical contradiction.
Yeah, but
Well,
then
it
who's to
does
say
if
that
he
the
wants to
universe
exist inside
is...
the universe. He has to exist outside of the universe. But
Yeah,
the
which he
thing
does.
is, you can still apply that same stream of logic to any sort of beginning. I mean, it doesn't prove that the God exists, let alone the Christian God. All it says is that there must have been something that started everything that we have currently that didn't have something that
Yeah.
started it. And I'm not a quantum physicist, so I can't answer that. given our
Right, and so you,
consequences
you
of
sort of
certain
you sort of
things,
jumped in right at the end.
none of
So
us know, except the thing about atheism is we're willing to accept that we don't know. And we don't have to jump to these conclusions until we're able
but
to
you're
find a
also
process that's able to lead us to the answer that we're looking for.
but you're also
And we
falsely
can't.
stating that you can't know.
No,
So
I'm saying I'm not an atheist that says that
I think he says we
God
don't know.
indefinitely doesn't exist, because we don't know what the beginning is. That most
right,
atheists don't think that. They're
don't
willing to
claim.
accept
Yeah, yeah,
God
yeah.
if plausible evidence is brought forward. But the thing is, with the text in the Bible and all of the arguments for God's existence, they're just not plausible enough to prove that a God exists, let alone a God that's the Christian God, because none of them link it to the words of the Old or New Testament.
Well, yeah. So the cosmos. So we did talk about the 5 proofs that I operate from, the 5 like pillars of evidence that I operate from to support my view that God is real. Right. The 5 pillars of Islam. No, I'm kidding. So we talked about those. So I made the point and said I concede. I agree. The cosmological argument does not say anything. It does not prove anything about a Christian God. It doesn't prove without beyond like scientifically beyond a shadow of a doubt anything about theism either, but it brings theism and the other option into the same arena, where a lot of atheists will say that no, they're not in the same. There's no evidence for God. There's absolutely no evidence for God. When we have this argument, this theory here that says, okay, you don't know, and I don't know, but my thing is just as likely as your thing because it has a logical chain of reasoning.
It's not evidence that there's a possibility of a God. It's a hypothetical of a reality where a God does exist. It's still, I don't think it's plausible enough to believe in a God. Like, I know that.
No, I mean the cosmological argument is never going to convert anybody. I agree with that.
Yeah.
One piece of the puzzle.
What would you say would convert somebody?
In my experience, only personal experience can convert somebody. I've never seen anybody sit down in their chair and like reasonably logically ration out, like starting from the point of like I'm an atheist, there's no God, or at least like I'm agnostic, maybe there's a God. Use the ontological argument or use the fine-tuning argument and then be like, okay, now I believe. That never happens.
Right,
what happens? It happens in your heart. What's that?
So what anecdotal experiences are what would create your belief in God, and I think that's why no Christians can agree what quote-unquote objective morality is, because everyone has a different view of it, because their morality is subjective. So then they have different views of what morality is, and they all believe that that's the morality that's written on their heart from God. So no one can really agree. It doesn't matter how Christian, how devout you are, that you can never really correlate with your moral structure and what you believe is right and wrong.
I don't agree with that at all. I think every Christian would have to agree, unless they're like a completely false, like some sort of antichrist, that the laws given by Christ to love your neighbor as yourself and to love God with all your heart, your mind, and your strength is totally universal amongst Christians, I think. But see, you're presenting a problem for Christians that we don't agree morally because we don't believe because we do believe in objective morality, but we all have a subjective view of it. But your thing is you don't even believe in objective morality. You think it's all subjective. So I don't see how you can make any moral claims with certainty or reason. Or logic.
It's subjective, just like your moral claims are subjective as well. But your
grounded in objective
claim that morality is objective inherently, that we all have it written on our hearts. My claim is that
we don't.
Actually says that the reason you believe that is because you have a subjective view of what morality is. So I apparently don't have that objective view of morality that you believe that you do have inherently from God.
Yeah.
But I'm able to explain your view of morality as well with my understanding of morality, which is that it's completely subjective.
But that doesn't say anything, because I'm also able to prove your view of morality based on my view of morality, because I would just have to say
it's objective, because I believe that being gay is okay, like it's all right, natural.
Yeah.
You're gonna completely disagree with me. We have two completely different objective, from your point of view, objective views of morality.
No. That's not what objective morality means. So, the way that I would like incorporate your view of morality into my view of morality which you just used somehow as a proof to say mine can't be right, is that you do live in a world that has objective morality. You just refuse to acknowledge it, or you don't see it, or you ignore it, right?
So you're saying that I do believe that being gay is wrong. I just choose to
no,
reject that?
What you believe is subjective. I'm just saying the actual structure of reality, and I don't want to say being gay is wrong. I don't know. That's a really complicated thing to get into. If you want to, we can do that specifically. But if you want to keep it to just morality, so I wouldn't say that that people who are gay are like wrong inherently. Like they're so sinful, then they're like commanded by a demon. My more nuanced take would be that having a lot of gay friends, like truly living in LA, and a lot of my friends are gay, and I talk with them, and I love them very much. They're all great people. But I do see that it does cause a certain amount of chaos in one's life. So anyway, it's like, is it the most structured, ordered way to go about your life? Maybe not. Is it like you're a bad person because you're gay and I'm going to be outside like picketing some LGBT rally? Like, of course not. Like, no, these people, like everybody needs love and support and understanding.
I don't think that you believe that though. I know that like one of the common views is like to not agree with the sin, but love the sinner.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's the same ideology as conversion therapy is. Oh, we love you, but we're gonna help you get past this part of yourself that you can't control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
again, that's why I'm not like I'm not politically oriented in that way. Like I will absolutely never try to convert a gay person. Like that's just not what my interest is. That's not what my calling is. And so and I think there's space in my heart and in the Bible to be like, that might be nobody's calling to actually do that. So that's a complicated.
Do you think the Bible condemns homosexuality or no?
I think the Bible promotes the union of a man and a woman to create the most stable like family structure for future generations. So
okay, so you don't think like when they raped the angels, you thought it was more about rape than homosexuality?
Well, I mean, once you're at the point of raping an angel, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe it's gay rape, and probably the subjective authors at the time that were recording that would see it as worse to rape a man than a woman. I actually don't know. That'd be an interesting question. So maybe that when you read it on your heart, and that almost, it feels like it has nothing to do with homosexuality. I understand there's a lot of scholarship that says like, this is a polemic against gay sex. Like, no, it seems more like a polemic against like being the most depraved possible society you can imagine, which is like to rape an angel.
But in this specific scenario, they're referring to like homosexual rape. Well, so do you think that the part that would be immoral is having sex with another man, or that it's raping someone in general?
Definitely the rape would be more immoral. Yeah.
The Bible.
Well, someone just chime in.
Wait, sorry. Let's see. Yeah, I want to hear what we got here. Blake.
I'm just adding to your argument, Avocado, is that I think Jesus is actually pretty specific that he thinks that homosexuality is a sin. He quite literally like talks about how it's a sin and how they won't enter the.
Could you give a verse?
Yeah, do you have a verse for that? Because I'm curious. Because I do know.
Let me pull that up. I know it's in the Bible. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, see what you can find.
I've read the Bible a few times. I don't know if Jesus said specifically, that's why it's such a controversy within the religion of whether it's right or wrong, because no one can really agree, because the Bible doesn't have a clear definitive. It's not in the commandments like do not fuck a dude.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it's like, if we're going to take all the Mosaic commandments and laws, and this is something that I was prepared to talk to you guys about.
Yeah.
But if
we
we're
went
going
over Mosaic laws last time.
Yeah, exactly, the Mosaic laws. So I looked into a little bit more about like what some of these quote unquote commandments represent in the Old Testament. And I think there's two important points. One, there is absolutely no reading in which the slaughter of innocent women, children, and animals is the intended purpose of that type of language. So there's a really, really clear scholarship on something called herem, Herem, which is a type of war, a type of battle, a type of decisive victory, which you see all over the ancient Near East. So I don't know if you've heard of these meshes steles, and all the other rulers like the Assyrians and the Syrians and all these people, when they have a decisive military victory, they write it in this very specific genre called a harem, and it describes the absolute destruction and the absolute like slaughtering of innocent women and children and animals. But it's understood throughout the entire ancient Near East that this is not actually what happens. This is a way. This is like, it's kind of like hyping up a team. I made this analogy to someone at some point, but it's like hyping up the football team before they go in to play the Super Bowl and being like, we're going to kill those guys. We're going to slaughter them. We're going to demolish them. And nobody actually thinks you mean that you're going to decapitate the other quarterback. That you know
I'd love
what
for
the
you to
implication of that.
go a little more into that, because
Yeah.
if that's true, then God meant something completely different. But I mean, he worded it specifically in the way to go back, slaughter the women, the children, innocents. But
But
I
then
don't know
if we're
how
talking
you
about what
really
God
get
means,
around
then we
that.
also have to talk about what he did. And so then in the rest of the Old Testament and in the very following subsequent chapters, you see that Amalekite women are not slaughtered. One of them marries one of the Jews. You see the integration of them into the Jewish society, into the Israelite society at that time, and they're everywhere. And this is true of the people of. So then there's another point which is really interesting, which Gavin Ortland pointed out, which is these cities that they're describing are military cities. So you wouldn't even expect there to really be women and children in these cities. Those people would live on the outskirts, outside, in the desert, in the wilderness, that type of thing. And the whole purpose of the city was to be a fortress. So for it to be totally destroyed is a military battle.
Well, I actually have a point
Yeah.
to rebuttal to
Let's hear
this.
it.
And because I think it was it King James at the time, or was he the king of I don't know, whoever was the king. Anyways, he kept some of their animals, the Amalekites' animals.
Right.
And God commanded that he got angry. He was,
Yeah.
oh, you left some of them over?
Yeah.
I mean, you left some of them to live, and he's commanded them to slaughter the rest of them.
Yeah.
Also, he says not only to go and fight and slaughter the combatants in the battle, he says to go back into the city and then kill the women and children. So he wasn't saying just to like kill the combatants like you were saying, like
Yeah.
he says go back and slaughter them all. It's an ethnic cleansing. The point was to get rid of the entire population. It wasn't.
But this is
it
the
wasn't
wrong way to
to
read.
just
This
hurt
is
them.
not the way that an ancient Near Eastern person would or could have read that, because it's a classic harem commandment, classic harem like statement. It's a description of a decisive military battle, and it was traditional in the ancient Near East, in all the cultures, including the Israelites, to say, yeah, we killed all the women and the children, we killed everybody, and then not actually do that. And no one expected that to actually be what happened. So when God says, look, I want you to go, and the same way that the Assyrians took over Ur or whatever decisively, definitively, with the purpose of dismantling and displacing the government that was there and replacing it with the Israelite government, that is what the context of a harem is. So when you say like, oh, you go back into the city and kill all the women and all the children and all this and that, that's just, when an ancient Israelite hears that, they go, oh, harem, gotcha. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I think you're using the wrong word, because a harem is a group of men's women. They're like slaves, or they're women that they would be pleasure.
Harem. That's a harem.
pleasure.
I think that's HARAM.
No, that's HREM. What are you referring to?
HR. The way that Gavin Ortland spelled it, which is obviously an Anglicization, is HEREM.
HEREM. Because I know that God, he makes sure that
Harem, as used in the
even Lord
Tanakh, means
children
something
are
given
made just
over
so
to
that
the
they were
Lord.
killed.
So yeah, this is a war of property. I can share it, but if I type in HEREM, it's one of the first things that comes up on Wikipedia.
All right, let me look this up here.
Yeah. Okay. So then there was another point. Does anyone else have anything to add to that sort of conversation, or?
No, I'm just listening. I'm good.
Cool. So another thing that this is actually the crucial point. So we can argue about what it was like to wage war in the ancient Near East, or we can argue about things that like in the same way that I'm not a physicist, I'm not an ancient Near East scholar. So there's going to be things I'm going to get tripped up on and not fully explain well. But the most important point is that the Old Testament was never given and intended to be a commandment for all of time, for the entire span of time. There was always the understanding that Jesus would come and give us the perfect commandment. So it's not like, so for some of these things, it's like, okay, yeah, don't eat shrimp, don't eat pigs, because literally if you live in the desert and you eat a pig, you will get some sort of parasite and you'll die a horrible death, right? So you could see how God would give certain laws just for that time and just for those people. But then once it becomes safe to eat pigs or whatever, then that's no longer relevant. And it's not like that law wasn't important. It's not like it wasn't part of the tradition and part of the time. But then when Jesus comes and says it's not what goes into you which defiles you, but what come out of you, this is a statement for sort of a larger group.
Well, what Jesus was referring to is he was referring to all the things that were used for witchcraft at the time. So that was tattoos, long clothes, long hair, and eating pigs, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But Jesus does say to fulfill the Mosaic law, and I know we went over this last time. In Matthew
he says
5,
he is the fulfillment. Yeah.
He says,
I am the fulfillment.
Fulfill the Mosaic law rather to abolish it. And last time you were saying fulfill, he means to
complete.
I don't know what you meant actually.
I was saying to fulfill the Mosaic law is to complete it, to be the perfect image of what it actually meant.
I mean that's a completely subjective point of view. I mean, if we're reading it for what it is, he says to fulfill the Mosaic law. To not
what does that even mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? How can he say that? How can he possibly come and say, I am here to tell you that you need to fulfill, again, it's like it seems like there'd be a better word, but fulfill the Mosaic law exactly as it was given to you and for all time, exactly as it means. And then for him to say, oh no, we can heal on the Sabbath. And oh no, we can and to just literally do the exact opposite for half the book.
I know it doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction.
No, it's not a contradiction. It's because you don't understand what fulfill means. You don't understand what.
I do understand. I know what you're alluding to, which is that he wanted the laws to evolve, but he would have said that. Fulfill means
but he did.
Carry out. I am your leader. Follow my laws. Fulfill my laws.
My laws.
I believe what happened was, if you can hear me,
let's hear it.
That Jesus was going around and breaking the commandments, right? He was breaking these laws, right,
mm-hmm.
in the Old Testament.
Yep.
And people were like, people thought he was trying to change the law or something.
Yep.
I think that's the context of this. That's why he says, well, I'm not here to break the old laws. I'm here to fulfill them almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I agree with you. I don't see how that's contradictory.
I think he still wants to uphold the old laws.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like he wants to uphold them, but he wants to make them he wants to make them the highest version of them.
He doesn't say that.
Okay, then what is this? Okay, do you guys see my screen? Matthew 19, ready?
No, wait. Can you do that on Discord or?
It should be streaming on Discord.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you just click watch.
Okay. Matthew 19. Did I write down what verse? It doesn't matter. Okay.
We'll just go through it.
Yeah, so Jesus had finished saying these things. He left Galilee and went to Judea. Large crowds are following him. You get it? Okay, some Pharisees came to him, and to test him, they asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause? He answered, have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. They said to him, why then did Moses command us to give a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her? So this is a Mosaic law. If you're sick of your wife, you give her a dismissal and you divorce her. Jesus said to them, it was because you were so hard-hearted that Moses allowed. Okay, but that's interesting because in other versions.
Wait, I want to finish it.
Okay, yeah, we will.
Just go back to it afterwards. Sorry.
Sure. So why? Sorry. Oh Jesus. Oh no. What am I doing?
they had such a hard heart.
I also do think it's pretty immoral to command people that they can never divorce their significant other.
Yeah, I think we could talk about that, and I think this is also complex, but we could talk about that. He said to
I
them,
don't
it was
think it's
because you were so hard-hearted that Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but at the beginning, it was not so. Okay? And then he gives his official what you should do about divorce only in the case of adultery. So we can talk about that. But just to make the point clear here, other versions of this, which I think is more like poetic, more fitting, you were so hard-hearted that Moses suffered you to divorce your wives. But at the beginning, it was not so. So Jesus himself is saying right here, there are Mosaic laws that had to be given, but are not reflective of the most fundamental order of reality. I'm giving you the fundamental order.
Unless I give you an exception, basically. There's objective views of what you can and can't do, unless I think that it's my subjective opinion that we don't have to do that.
Well,
right?
yeah, if God decides that you don't have to do something specific, then sure. Like if God decides that I don't have to, I don't know, obey the laws of gravity and he shoots me off into space, that would be up to him, wouldn't it? But I don't see your point there.
Right. But with our subjective views of morality that are inferior to God inherently, apparently, but we can still view the things that God did were like terrible compared to, what we know as good and bad,
Sure. But what are you basing that off of?
Well, I mean, apparently we have a moral view that's like inferior to God's, and I mean we can make decisions that are better than God made.
Yeah. Well, no. We can't make decisions that are better than God made. Like, so for instance, you've never been.
I would tell him to make the Amalekites disappear. Don't slaughter them mercilessly. I mean, just make them literally appear out of thin air.
So you can imagine yourself giving a divine command to an army of ancient Israelites, like.
Oh, I mean, yeah, 100%. I mean, if it can be done in a past fiction story, it can be done in my
right. So what you're saying is I should be God.
Well, anyone I feel like with a modern view of morality can do a lot better than God.
Okay,
but, I mean, it is
what makes modern what makes a modern view of reality, because it's all subjective as you say, like better than so by your logic, if the ancient Near East thought it was great to slaughter and kill women, then you're saying that it literally actually was, because everybody subjectively believed that.
Well, intersubjectively, we went over this time. Intersubjectively,
same.
Because it was just what the society agrees with.
Exactly. But, so you're saying I'm morally superior to God, and yet I believe that it's okay to murder and kill and perform Holocaust. Yeah, but somehow you're morally superior to God. But you're saying as long as everybody believes it, I can just go along with what everybody believes because it's an intersubjective morality. I don't understand how you're defending your position that you are morally superior to God when you believe, one, there is no objective morality, but two, whatever morality does exist, it's just whatever everyone else goes with, I go with. That makes sense. But somehow that makes you better than God? I don't understand that.
I just want to correct myself here.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't say anything about homosexuality.
Okay, interesting. Good to know.
Putting that out there.
Good to know. Yeah. Avocado, I didn't want to or Ben, I didn't want to alienate you or seem like I'm getting mad or anything. I just want to point out that sort of hypocrisy that you're baking in to this reading. Okay.
Oh, talking about morality.
Yeah, we were.
God's morality versus our morality.
I don't know if you know you're muted, Ben, by the way, just so you know.
I would probably agree with... I didn't hear your full argument, Brave Avocado, but, I mean, if I had to guess, I'd probably agree with it in the sense that morality really just depends on what part of the earth you are. Like, I mean, the Indians have different morality than the Japanese. Japanese have different morality than the Russians. Everybody has different morality. Everybody's morality is what they think it is, and that doesn't really make sense with a God, right? If a God had a morality, don't you think that morality would be consistent throughout the whole world? But we don't see that.
Well, no. I mean, for one, it is remarkably consistent for what it is. I mean, certain things are just kind of understood.
Said there's not, though. We all
no. I agree that it's not consistent. Everybody has a different subjective view, but just because there's an objective morality doesn't mean everybody's going to know what that is and follow it perfectly.
Well, then it's not objective. It's not
Okay,
known.
so if you don't know, so if you can't comprehend what an exponent is, 3 to the 5th power, then they don't exist.
No,
No.
it does. But like,
Okay, so what are
I'm
you saying?
is if you do something horribly wrong,
Yeah.
and you don't understand that, then, I mean,
Then what you're saying is
What do you
that's
think?
okay.
You know what, Streets?
Well-
Tell me what makes more sense here. Avocado, go ahead. I'm not gonna cut you off, man.
well, no. I forget what I was saying. So, I had a good point, but
I can
really
I
is
can
amazing.
start your
But
sentence again. I didn't mean to cut you off, brother. Sorry. So your sentence, the way it started was, just because you do something that's horribly wrong, but you don't know that it's horribly wrong, and then you were gonna finish your sentence before I cut you off.
well, yeah. Then subjectively to you, it's okay.
Yeah.
But
And I'm
I
saying it's
think
not.
that
It's still not.
my tool and everyone's tool of what is right and wrong is, I mean, would I want that to happen to me? How would I feel if I was in that situation? I mean, psychopaths lack this cognitive ability, but
Yep. And
I mean,
entire
I think
societies.
it's not that hard for us to understand what is right and what is wrong. I mean,
Yeah. And I'm not saying that you can be. So the claim here, this is another. Yeah. So for the moral argument, claim that some Christians will make, which I want to be really careful not to make, is that you can only be moral if you believe in God, or if you know about, if you accept objective morality or something like that. No. Atheists, people that only believe in subjective morality, still believe in morality. They still act as moral people. They still are. They can be much more moral than a professing Christian who's a horrible person, right? Like that. So that's not the argument. The argument is, what is the basis of morality itself? What is the ground from which morality comes from? And to you, you're saying, I guess, just subjective experience. Just everyone just kind of knows it. But that sounds
we are
objective.
the creators of morality, so we kind of define what it is. Just like the thing is, even if God does exist, it's his subjective view of what is right and wrong. You know what I mean? And I guess
I think that's
just
not
'cause he's
how
the
a that's
creator
not
of the
how a
universe, I don't
Christian would
think
would.
why- but
That's
yeah,
not how a
since
really
my
nuanced
answer
Christian would
be
put it.
Because we are the creators of morality, we're the only moral agents on planet Earth. We decide what is right and wrong, just like we decide what is right and wrong for the animals. Like,
Yeah.
we protect animals because they're not able to do so.
Yeah.
They don't have the mental capacity to be able to protect themselves in the way that we're able to.
Right.
Can I
Okay.
ask you
Yeah.
a
Let's jump to What's up?
Two questions. One question: do you think a baby is born knowing what morality is?
It's a good question. No, probably not. Probably not knowing, not having any conception of morality or consciousness of it. No.
Okay. Second question: so if we're not born knowing what morality is, and if we look around the earth and we see thousands of different religions, right? Or let's just say hundreds, thousands, whatever.
Sure.
Each one of these have different morals. Do you think that people existed around this earth for a long time, and they created religions and put their morals onto these different gods, and then over time those gods projected the morals that they were given?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think people had a moral intuition, and then they said, how do I ground this? And they realized that you can't possibly ground it except in some sort of supernatural realm. And then they
Because that doesn't. Oh, sorry.
Well, and then they play. So if Native Americans had this deep intuition or something that murder is wrong, or incest or something that's wrong is wrong, and then they create a story or a tradition or a ritual even or something that confirms that murder is wrong or incest is wrong, that doesn't mean they just made that up. That means that they're translating what they feel to be wrong into their tradition. So that's not mutually exclusive. Based on their subjective opinion of it, but that doesn't mean that the objective part of it doesn't exist. Just because you perceive something. So like you're talking about the earth too. Like if I look outside and look at a tree, all I have is my subjective experience of the tree. Does that mean it's not there? Of course not.
No. I mean,
wait.
physical pain and mental pain are the factors of what is right and wrong. So, like, even the Native Americans, even monkeys can see when you kill someone they love, I mean, it hurts them. Or if you are hurt physically, you're stabbed, it hurts you. You don't want that to happen. It is therefore wrong to inflict pain on others in any sort of way. You know what I mean?
Okay, so
Like, even
pain.
if someone
So you
inflicts
can.
pain on you, it's still
Yeah.
immoral. Well, it's
Yeah.
subjective, but it's still immoral from that perspective to
Yeah.
inflict pain on them.
Okay, well, I want to hear
I
what.
don't-
What? Yeah. What were you gonna say, Blake?
What we see around the world though, and throughout history, is that not every, I guarantee you, most of them like the same ideas as Christian. The Nords, the Vikings.
Yeah, the Vikings.
didn't
Yeah.
portray any similar things
Right.
to the Christians, and cultures all over, like in Africa and Asia and the Americas had not all the same Christian values that God portrayed.
Right.
So they definitely weren't creating some kind of given to them through like the Holy Spirit of God. They had
Yeah.
their own worldviews that they found through their natural
Yeah.
experiences.
I completely agree.
So to me,
I
that
completely
makes
agree with
sense.
you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Just because you have a subjective experience of something and then create your religion or do anything based on that and use that subjective experience, that doesn't mean that the objective truth of it isn't real. You're just saying they have a subjective experience, so therefore they created it into their religion. I agree. I completely agree. So I think I guess what the crux of this is, you're saying you would expect if God were real that he would perfectly reveal his moral truth, perfection, to every single person on earth in the exact, like, unanimously. Again, you're back to like, I should be God.
You have the burden of proof on this, that this is here, because from what we know, and you agree, everyone's views of what morality is completely subjective.
Yeah.
We don't have a rule book to it.
Well, I don't have a burden of proof. I mean, maybe I do, but I'm just saying, are you willing to sacrifice objective
view? Others are claiming that it's subjective, and we can prove that. We can prove that everyone has different views of what morality is. We can't prove that there is one universal rule or law. I mean, the only
But you haven't proved
anything.
Bible. You haven't proved anything that's counter to what I believe, because I also agree with you that everybody has.
I do. Exactly, you agree. We have proof. We're able to prove that everyone views what morality is in a completely different light.
In a completely subjective and different way.
We have people on death row that have killed numerous amounts of people, think it's okay. There's people that are out there, preventing murders, police officers and such. I mean, everyone has completely different views, and we can prove that. But we can't prove that there is some sort of law over these that dictate.
You can't prove it. Fine. I mean, again, it's funny that we're at odds with this because we completely agree. But what I would say is,
I don't know if you heard me there. I'm just gonna take this call and I'm gonna head.
Okay, yeah, got you, brother. So it doesn't matter if you can prove it or not. And maybe it's maybe it's true that you absolutely cannot prove objective morality in any way. I'd have to look into that. I would be interested in looking into that, but. So maybe you can't prove it, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And so it's weird to say that, like, because people have subjective morality, that's all they have, period. So that's what the claim is. That's what the claim that our friend was just making is, that we can observe that everybody has a subjective view of morality, like they do with absolutely everything, including physical objects that are right in front of you. And so then the corollary of that is that there is no objective object in front of you. Does that make sense to the people that are still here, Blake? Like, does that even make sense as an argument? Like, how does that preclude what I'm saying from possibly being true? And if what I'm saying is possibly true, and it makes more sense, and it allows me in my proof that there is subjective morality, which I agree with, right? Does that make sense?
I think what we're saying. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Why I'm speaking so quickly is because my internet keeps crapping.
I know, you're kind of cutting in and out, so I can hear it, but that's all right.
All right, so, I think what we're saying is morality doesn't disprove God, but it doesn't prove God.
Sure.
That's what we're saying.
Sure.
The cosmological argument can go either way to morality. So I don't see any argument to say, morality disproves God. But it doesn't prove that, because I think I always see Christians, apologists, always say, morality is proof. They always use morality Honestly, for me personally, I think that's one of the weakest arguments.
Well, I agree
Because
with you that it's not a proof in a scientific proof, but it does point out what. So, like you said, like, okay, so it doesn't prove God, but it doesn't disprove God, right? So you're in this position where you get to choose which worldview you're going to step into and sort of assume. And one of the worldviews does not allow you to condemn things on a moral basis, because ultimately it just comes down to the random bumping of atoms and molecules and evolution and biology. And the other one does allow you to. So I'm saying if you basically have these two equal options, why would you not choose the one that allows you to like actually condemn on an objective basis for all humanity, for all people, things that are horrible, like rape or something? I think the only thing you could probably say is I'm not gonna, and this is what Alex O'Connor would say, I can't force myself to believe something I don't believe. So it's not gonna help for him to pretend he believes in God because he wants to hold some sort of moral truth. Is that what you guys would have to say?
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
I
let's hear
want you
it.
to step into the headspace of an atheist real quick.
Gotcha.
And I want you to believe, like, I don't truly believe, but for the sake of argument, believe
Yeah.
that the universe is meaningless and everything
Gotcha.
just happens because it happens. Okay.
Gotcha.
There's no God, no ordained destiny, nothing. It just shit just happens.
Yep.
Is it possible to derive meaning in a subjective sense from a meaningless universe?
Definitely. I mean, I
So
know
then,
I did
from
it.
the
I know
atheist,
atheists do
okay,
it. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so then from the atheist perspective, I think it's totally fair for us to say, yeah, there's no objective morality, but
Right.
from our perspective, even though it is just atoms bumping into one another, we can derive our own meaning from that, and that's
Sure.
what we try to do. And
Sure.
what that happens is you get, people who think that their morality is, oh no, it's moral for me to go murder somebody, but we collectively agree that generally speaking, there's these certain things that we
it's
shouldn't
not.
do, and that's ascribing meaning to something that's meaningless. And I think atheists. Like all atheists, like maybe not consciously, but definitely subconsciously understand that we're assigning meaning to meaninglessness.
Gotcha.
The problem that I have with the religion is, I think you also acknowledge that we have to assign meaning to meaninglessness, but it feels like that's probably the problem is that that's not enough. That's not satisfying. So we have to create meaning from meaning, and the meaning would be there's a God involved, right? And so it feels like to me you have to add this extra hoop to jump through, and that extra hoop is not only unnecessary in my opinion, but not based in any observable reality.
Okay. Okay, so let me try to steelman what you just said so I'm clear in my mind so I can respond to it well. Okay, so you're saying, okay, yeah, there as atheists we basically contend or we concede that there is no like objective meaning or divinity or and in this sense morality, objective morality, but that doesn't mean we don't create it, that there's not a use and a purpose for instantiating morality and truth like for ourselves subjectively. Is that
Yeah, for our own convenience.
That's a starting point for our own convenience, for our own well-being, even for like genetically, like passing down our genes or something like that. Because if a safer society, it's easier to, be safe, have kids that are going to grow up, whatever. Okay, so then my simple question is, if it is subjective like that, how do you describe eras of history and regions where something that I think you just in your heart want to say is wrong, like slavery? How do you call it wrong when everyone believes it?
I'm sure that right now, my present belief system, that at some point in the future, humanity will get to a stage where my beliefs are considered so archaic, it's unbelievable
Right.
that someone could ever
Right.
possibly conceive of them being true. I
Sure.
totally understand that.
Yeah.
And because as an atheist, and I view morality as subjective, I understand that what is going to be useful in terms of morals or a guiding system for future humans is going to be completely different than me as a human right now. And so I understand that as society changes, the way humans behave also has to change. And so I don't actually find that much of a conundrum. Like, change is just inevitable. It has to happen. We believed things in the past that we now believe to be wrong, so we try to amend our behavior and change
Yeah.
things.
So
just,
it's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's just part of the evolution of humanity becoming more like prolific or something, or like having more
I have
kids.
the lucky ability to have hindsight, and I can say that if we were to practice those behaviors in the past now, I would say that that's wrong.
Okay.
And as a result, I don't practice said behaviors, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you grow up as a young little tot, right, and your parents are teaching you how to be a good human in the world,
Yeah.
you do things that are wrong, and when you do that, you get punished, and then
Yep.
you learn not to do those things anymore. So, and then
Yep.
when you get older, you go, "Holy shit! I can't believe I did all those
can't
really
believe
bad
I
things when I was
considered
younger.
that,
Like,
yeah.
how could I have done that?" But that's what you did. That's part of the learning process. Is you have to slowly get better and
Well, so
well-adjusted
I
and
agree.
learn.
I agree with you, but isn't it interesting that in your analogy there's a parent telling you what's
That
right
is
and
true.
wrong?
That is true. That is true.
Isn't that kind of ironic that we're talking about how do
I
you
suppose I let
possibly
the little
know?
Freudian slip, but
And again, I'm not trying to get you in a gotcha. I'm not saying like you're a Christian, therefore I'm not getting you in a gotcha. But literally, I mean, the analogy. I think that was more than just Freudian because it's like intrinsically, intuitively, we have this feeling that you can't really know what is wrong unless it's against some sort of like ultimate wrong. Do you understand?
unless you have a reference, you need a
Some
reference
sort
to
of
determine whether
reference
something-
to say
But couldn't I
something is
use
wrong.
couldn't I just use another human as a reference? Like, perhaps my society, I have my own society, and we, I don't know, sacrifice children
Yep.
to the rain gods so I
Yep.
could get rain in the sun,
Right.
in the springtime for harvest, right?
Yep,
And
yep,
another
yep.
society doesn't do that, and they get along just fine. Comparatively, there's no God in this situation. We don't need some deistic appeal to an objective morality.
No.
I can just look at the two societies, how they fare, and be like, this is a completely unnecessary practice. I'm going to deem this as wrong.
But if it's
That would be the
unnecessary, if
parent
it's
figure.
unnecessary
It's
and
a
it's not
reference.
objectively wrong, like, and the societies are getting along just as fine, one next to the other, then why not why not sacrifice the kids?
I mean,
It's just working. It's
we
fine.
we are currently living in a in a world where, you know, halfway across the globe from me,
Mm-hmm.
there are people engaging in behaviors that I consider to be completely unsavory.
Yep. Yeah.
But I think it's going to bite them in the butt in the long run doing those unsavory things. And I think we're witnessing them getting bit in the butt for doing those unsavory things.
Yep.
I think that it's no wonder that the most free, prosperous, and successful countries are all the ones who abandoned morality of the past and chose not to stick in their ways. Like, they adapted with society, and as people changed, the societies changed.
Hey guys, do you mind if we
Yep.
do like just a quick minute just to go what we're talking about?
Yeah, sure. We're just talking about objective versus subjective morality,
Okay.
and we're still on that point. And we're saying, I mean, basically, we're saying we came to the point that there's sort of, no matter what you believe, whether it's subjective or objective, in order to have any sort of meaningful structure of morality, it's compared to something, right? So, in this instance, our friend is arguing that you can look back at history and say slavery is wrong because we have the benefit of hindsight. Is that fair? Is that a fair sort of steel man? Is that a fair summation of what you were talking about?
Very good summation.
Okay.
Reeds, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
good point,
What's
yeah.
up?
So you asked, how can I judge if slavery's bad, right?
Right.
Is that your original question?
Pretty much.
I
Sure.
would
Yeah.
say- or why do I think it's bad? If
Yeah.
morality's-
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's only because that's what I've been taught.
Yeah.
live in a
Exactly. So this
society
is like a
who's
radical
taught-
subjectivism. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, if
it's
I-
kind of in our nature to avoid suffering, so I think suffering is the factor that makes it wrong.
But like we see,
Okay.
for example, in our society, murder is evil, right? Rape
Mhm.
is evil. But
Mhm.
like I always go back to the Vikings, but in the Viking society, that was actually good.
It was
Like, you
totally
should
fine.
pay
Yeah.
for your enemy.
Yeah.
But they didn't see a problem with it. That was their whole lifestyle. So
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of shows that if I live in a society that's taught that slavery is good, that's what I'm gonna think.
That's exact,
Yeah.
and that's exactly my trouble with it, and that's exactly what you have to say, given your worldview,
I think that's
and that's a
reality.
cost. Well, it's not so clear. I mean, it's you guys still haven't made the point. You've said that morality is subjective, which I agree with. That every
Wait.
person has a subjective relationship with morality. Okay, I completely agree with that. But no one has said anything or given any proof or evidence that morality is not objective. They're not mutually exclusive.
Evidence can also be dismissed without evidence.
What's that?
And ours doesn't have the burden of evidence that morality is subjective. We agree on this point. It's completely out of the picture that morality has some sort of objective.
How is it
what
out
is
of the
right
picture?
and wrong.
How
would
is it
be
out? In
good
what
if
sense is it
could.
out of the
Yes, I
picture?
agree. If we had some rule book of what is right and wrong, but unfortunately we don't have that.
Well, except that we do, so you can either believe it or not
But you
believe it.
can't
But
prove it. You
yeah,
can't prove it. You can
well, you
claim
can't
it
prove.
exists, but you can't prove it.
You can't prove anything. So again, you made this claim that like
You can.
claims made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So when your mother says that she loves you, you can just dismiss that. That doesn't mean anything.
Well, you can, but it can also be have evidence along with it. I mean,
That's
there's stuff like your mother buys you gifts, she tells you she loves
right,
you, she
right.
dedicates her personal time.
And so
towards you. She might even suffer for you.
your intuitive feeling that certain things are wrong? Is there anything in society today you disagree with? Like anything, like maybe OnlyFans or it doesn't have to be anything like that. Is there anything that you look at and you go, that's wrong? I know basically everybody agrees with it, but that just doesn't seem right.
Well, yeah, anything that leads to suffering of any individuals, yeah.
Okay, so but why is that wrong? Because society agrees with it. Clearly they're okay with that
Because,
suffering.
like for example, if I chopped over here Jackson's head off, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I guess it hurts him.
But why
it
is it
hurts
bad
him
to why is it bad to hurt someone? I mean, it's just subjective. So Jackson's fine with if he's cool with it. Like he volunteers and like he's a sacrifice for the sun god, and you just chop his head off. Like who cares? It's not wrong.
Well, yeah, I guess that I am one of the type of people. I think that suicide is and assisted suicide is okay. If so that's another thing, an example where you'd probably disagree because this is subjective. But I think that it's okay for someone to have that decision of taking their own life because they didn't have the option of coming into the world. And now they don't have a moral obligation to exist, you know. So,
Yeah, okay. I mean, a friend of mine recently asked me about assisted suicide, and I wasn't actually sure where I stood on it at the end of the day. But I understand that point. Okay, so the fact that say that like I guess this is probably true, but assisted suicide is like just illegal in America. Like just imagine, even if that's not fully true, imagine that it's just completely illegal. But then you and I and others have this like intuition, this like feeling that shouldn't be the case, that it should be allowed, that it should be legal or something like that.
yeah.
Then what kind of basis can you possibly support that on other than like something
Your
unproven?
subjective view of what is right and
Yeah,
wrong.
but what's
Again,
proven about
it's
that?
not a good thing. I agree that we have a world with subjective morality, but unfortunately we do. It would be nice if we had some sort of guidelines, but we don't. And I know that you feel like morality needs this obligation to have an authority over us of what is right and wrong. But that's only implicit if God exists and he
Right.
has
And so
these
again,
rules
it's like
that
I'm
we
not
should be following.
proving
in
anything
order
to
for
you.
us to believe in that, we do have to prove that God exists and then prove that he has
Sure.
certain views of morality that we must accept.
Right,
The
right,
only
right.
proof you have of that is in the Bible.
Right.
Then you're saying I need proof that morality is subjective. We both know that morality is subjective. We can't.
No.
make
I don't
this
need
leap
proof.
toward
Yeah,
being
exactly. I
objective.
don't need proof that morality is subjective. But if you're gonna prove to me that God is impossible, that is not a valid option to take, given what it offers you with your
I
worldview and
won't,
stuff,
though,
then
'cause
you have.
I don't have the right to do that.
Okay, good. Okay, fine. So at least we agree with that. But this is the more fundamental point. Wait, hold on. I had it in my head, and then now I'm losing it. So you were just
Happens to
talking.
most.
You were just talking subject. I have a book that tells me what to do. Shit, man, I had a good point. I forgot. I'm sorry. Okay, did you have something else to keep going from there? Because okay, so. Oh yeah, this is what it was. Okay, I'm not trying to prove God to you through the moral argument per se. What I'm showing you is that what you sacrifice by adopting the worldview that you've adopted, which, just to be clear, to say uh, it's bad that morals are subjective, but unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Well, first of all, most people don't believe that's just the way it is. And so why do they believe that? Whatever. I would say that's the proof is going to come from your experience and your relationship with God, who informs you about how to act morally. Whatever. That's the proof. This is not the proof. This is saying you have two options: a world in which morality is not objective, and a world in which morality is objective. And what you suffer by choosing the one where it's not objective is that I don't see how you can make a definitive claim that something that everybody agrees with, like slavery, is wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I've told
Okay.
you this before. You're not proving anything wrong. I think that intersubjectively would be okay to do at the time. That
Right.
doesn't mean I
Right.
agree with it being okay.
Okay, so this
So
argument
we're
is
we're in agreement on that. But
yeah.
that doesn't prove that morality is not subjective.
No, no, no. I mean, I don't think I can prove to you the objective. I'd have to like show it to you or something. I mean, it's not even a scientific concept, so there's obviously no scientific proof. But
Right. There's no proof whatsoever.
it's more like an emotional proof. Like if you just don't feel like, so I think again, this is
I
going to be an
know, I know. That's
impasse.
subjective though. Feelings are subjective.
Yeah. But
It's
that doesn't mean there's
feelings are
no
subjective, like you
objective. That
said.
doesn't mean there's
Love is
no
subjective. It doesn't.
objectivity. Like so,
You
just
can't
because you say that,
objectively know how love is supposed to be because it's so many different ways. Feelings are subjective. If
yeah,
you feel that God is telling you something, people have done
horrible
things
things because they
that
feel
God is telling
right.
them
And so then I
something. You
would be,
understand? It can.
yeah.
Go ahead.
But then I
Sorry
would
for
at least be
interrupting.
able to say that they were wrong about what God was telling them. But you would just say, well, they felt it, so that's just as good as anyone else's feeling.
No, because I would think that's delusional. They're being delusional. They're making
But why? It's their
actions
subjective.
to hurt someone based on their what they feel is
Yeah.
right to do.
And I
don't think
agree with
you
you, by
should
the
do
way.
anything that leads to hurt someone else or
I
yourself.
completely agree. So I would think they're delusional too. I get the sense you're saying they're delusional because they think God told them, and I would say I think they're delusional because again, well, actually the same exact. They think God told them when obviously, if you know anything about God or know Him even remotely, you know He would never tell you to like rape somebody or do a genocide or do something like that. Okay. And then
You-
we're going to go back to the Bible where you said he did tell them to do a genocide. Then I'm going to talk about harem. And then we're going to go back to the exact
Right. So the
beginning.
thing
But
that we're missing is the proof of God. That's
yeah.
where you can branch off into all these sections, right?
Yeah.
I can always come back with, yeah, but in order for that to be true, God has
God
to
must be
exist,
true.
right?
Right.
So
So
that can always
in terms of the moral argument, just to be clear, because we are at an impasse, like I think we are definitely not going to convince each other either way of this one. Just to be clear, I'm showing what the cost is of denying an objective morality. That's all I'm displaying here. The cost of that. It's a very high cost to pay. Do you agree or no?
Well, I don't think that it's objective. But
Right. So
yeah,
you
I
just think
think
well,
that
so you just think there
anything
is no
that
other
leads
option.
to hurt someone
There-
else or yourself, yeah. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
so.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. All right. Well, I think that is good. That might be a good place to wrap it up in general because we actually have been going for over 2 hours, which is great.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even
So
notice.
I know, me neither, dude. It just flies by, which is awesome. But my room is heating up and I'm getting hot. Okay, so let's see what people got in the chat and see if there's anything maybe we can talk about on the way out or
Yeah.
the
Is
cost.
there any way you can show the chat on your screen so I can kind of see?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Let's see. Show it on the Discord there. Where's that damn chat? Is this it? No. This is it. There you go. Okay. So, dude.
Oh, Cosmic Brandon.
Yeah, Comic Brandon's all over the place. he loves yapping.
Have you ever had him on?
No, he's too cowardly to even come in the Discord. I tell him every single time. I drop the link and I say, Brandon, get in the Discord, and he has the same answer every time. If your God wanted me there, he'd put me there. It's like, yeah, I agree, but what do you want to do? So that's Comic Brandon in a nutshell. So we got how can one believe in God and be anti-authoritarian? Comic Brandon. because you cannot think of any other alternate existence doesn't prove God. That's like saying I don't understand science, so I'll just say it's magic. I don't think that's exactly true, but I understand what you're saying, David. We don't want to argue for a God of the gaps, but if you literally can't think of any other alternative to a problem, then probably the only one you can think of is at least more likely. So that's the point of that.
Well, then in that sense, God is just the unknown answer. And
Yeah.
God is just the word for the unknown answer. That could be anything.
Well, that's one part of it, but there's so many more dimensions to it as well. So there's the experiential dimension. There's the
You can't say it's the God of the Christian Bible, at least, but
the only reason I would say the God of the Christian Bible is the historicity of Jesus. So I don't know if that's relevant to what they were talking about, but okay, that's I mean alternative to a creator. Yeah, that's the point Alex is saying. What is the alternative? Like what? Not like what I know. Not like you guys know what the alternative to God is. You guys know how the universe was created through natural laws. It's just like when you're imagining that, what can you possibly imagine? And then the answers are either the infinite multiverse or some sort of infinite timeline. But both of these things, to me, at least seem to require an infinite set of material things, material objects.
Or there's something we can't even comprehend in the slightest, but that doesn't mean that it's God at all, you know.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be theories that we're currently able to comprehend. I mean, like, think of how an ant can't comprehend a single thing we experience through our daily life. Yet we experience it, and even if you tried to explain it to an ant, they would never understand.
Right. Well, this is a great analogy. Does that mean that we don't exist?
No.
Exactly. So you haven't proved anything with that. Just like I haven't proved anything with the moral argument, you haven't proved anything with saying that because we wouldn't be able to understand whatever truth there is. Like, I don't claim to understand what God is like.
Proving that it does exist. Yeah, I agree that there's a possibility
that
exists, but it needs proof in order for us to believe that it does exist.
Okay.
Because believing needs that proof.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the way that it worked for me, and I think it probably works for almost everybody, is that the primary proof is experiential, where you have a dark night of the soul, and then you cry out to God and you say, Lord, if you're real, because it doesn't seem like it. Like when Jesus himself cried out on the cross, Eloi, Eloi, sabachthani, right? So when you have that moment as a person, and then you get that actual relational, personal answer, then you start to think, okay, well, how can I believe in this logically? And then you move cosmological argument, fine-tuning argument. Then you move moral argument. You move into these things from the experiential reality that you have first.
Right. And I don't know if you remember, but I'm a former Catholic. I think
Right.
So I have this experience of God. Why aren't you here to help me? Please give me something. And then when you're searching for that something, you can have let's say something in your life like, oh, suddenly, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
like you get a gift from a friend that's like really generous, and you're like, wow, God is looking out for me. You don't have a way to prove that that's from God. I mean, or from anything supernatural. You just kind of assume that.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. I know that that's what you want to think is the answer, because I've been there. I've done that. I don't want to give the whole, I was an atheist, or I was a Catholic, so I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Well,
better,
let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a basic question, just because. So the way you're describing like your relationship as a Catholic with God doesn't really sound like the way that God speaks to me. So I'm curious if you ever, in silence in your heart or something like that, in meditation or prayer or something, did you ever get to have a conversation with God like that? Like, did you ever ask him and he was like, yeah, I'm here?
Yeah. I would wait for those, and I feel like you're in such an emotional state that you're really searching for whatever it is, and you try to excuse these thoughts that come to your head, like, oh, it's okay, we can breathe, think this will pass, like stuff like that. Just that self-reassurance that comes to you, even if you do meditation in any form.
Yeah. No, and I got that as a Zen Buddhist. I got that as well. I got like spiritual communication and stuff like that. So it's not
Oh,
exclusive to
you were a
Christianity.
Buddhist for a bit?
Yeah, I tried Buddhism for a little bit. So I
I'm
studied.
going to Nepal soon to
Oh, you are? Oh, that'll be
uh, climb
sweet.
Nopsi. Yeah.
That is sweet. Those guys
Wait,
are cool. Yeah.
sorry, if you wouldn't mind, I have 3 quick questions for
Yeah,
you.
hit
Like
us.
the
Hit us.
first 2 are pretty quick, and the last one's actually a bit longer. But
Okay.
the first one will be, you said that the major driving force in your faith is the personal experience that you had.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you don't prescribe to Mormonism, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when John Smith received the visions from the angel Moroni and was
Yeah,
given
yeah.
the golden tablets,
Yeah.
do you think what do you think that was?
I think he had a genuine personal experience, a genuine spiritual experience that he
Okay.
failed to discern the source of.
That's a confusing plot.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So wait, do you think he was not given golden tablets that had the next
I'm
the scripture
yeah,
on it? Do you think
I
that
am
was all fake or?
I'm skeptical of that. So my intuition is that that's fake, but
Okay.
I will leave open the possibility that some spiritual entity, probably a demonic one given how it all went, did some sort of magic trick and convinced Joseph Smith that this was real. Now, the tablets, it's like, okay, this is a physical thing that should be very provable. Where are these tablets? Why would that not be anywhere? And how can you
Right.
just rely on that when there's zero evidence of that? Whereas like the
Okay.
Bible, it's like we have this historical chain of custody. So it's a little bit.
Okay.
That's why my intuition is like that's probably fake. But is it possible for a demon to come and say these are the laws of the universe? You should take 50% of everybody's money and invest it in pharmaceutical companies. Like, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't really like track.
Found the Boy Scouts. You must create
Yeah.
the Boy Scouts.
It might create the Boy
alright.
Scouts. It's like maybe that one was
it's-
from God. I don't know, but it's like kind of a creepy organization, regardless.
Yeah.
But
The black
Okay.
evil demons. sent
Yeah,
by-
yeah, the mark of Cain. Okay, so the
Yeah.
second question is going to be, if you see the answering of your prayers and having that like heart to heart with Jesus or God, I don't know which one you experienced, but
both, yeah, but Jesus, really.
both.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you not think that it's perhaps you think that that's like that cements your faith, right? But do you not perhaps think it's a greater indictment that there's millions of prayers that go completely unanswered? Isn't that like
Yeah,
wouldn't
well,
that be a
'cause
greater
to be clear-
greater reasoning to be like,
Yeah.
ooh, maybe there's something going on here?
Yeah, well, just because something is prayed for doesn't mean it should be given. So millions of my prayers have gone unanswered, but it would be prideful to say that all of my prayers should be answered. So I don't. All of my prayers should be answered. If I pray to God and I'm like, just give me a harem of big titty women and a Lamborghini, and he should just be like, okay, it's a prayer, so you get it.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be. It doesn't have to be all of them. I mean, there's
Yeah.
hundreds
You
of
can
people
answer
that there's hundreds of people that pray to hopefully hear from somebody, and they never do.
And they never do,
And that's what
yeah.
breaks their faith. That's I
Yeah.
mean, like, how many people do you think have left religion because they never got answers?
Now, this is an interesting
Wouldn't
question.
you think? Wouldn't you think it would be like a great opportunity for God to like maybe just even once, like literally just once, go to those people and show them that He exists? But it seems that
Yeah.
He's unable to do that.
Okay, so
Yeah,
would
he
we have
tends
any
not to
reason
speak
to
to people who don't believe.
would all of us be here in communion together talking about very interesting, deep philosophical topics if none of you had lost your faith?
I don't know about that actually. I think
I
philosophy.
never had faith to begin with. So
I mean, I
unfortunately
wouldn't
for
be.
me,
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, right.
not applicable, but
Right, not applicable. But so the point of that is it intrinsically bad for somebody to lose their faith if it sends them on a spiritual journey of seeking that actually deepens the faith? And so I know this doesn't happen for every single person. A lot of people, I'm sure, lose their faith and die, and then they whatever. But again, we have to get back into my like hell doctrine. So I think a lot more people are saved than is like fundamentally is assumed by fundamentalists. And I think there's a real place for like purgation after. So you're basically a good person, you love your neighbor as yourself, and you seek truth or something like that. I think that person who has lost their faith, as in like left the Catholic Church, I don't see why it's impossible for God to bring them back into the church, into His love, into His heart after they die or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't see it's not intrinsically bad to lose your faith. I lost it, But then because the faith I had was shallow and meant nothing.
Then when it seems to me, if I'm blasphemy and all, if I pretend I'm God,
Uh-huh.
and I want to save as many people as possible because I love humans, right? I
Yeah,
created
yeah.
them; they're in my image. I think
Yeah.
they're beautiful. I love all my children, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I would want to save as many as possible.
Yeah.
And so, like in my brain, I'm thinking like, what would be the best way to convince everybody, to show everybody that I truly exist and I'm here, and I want you all to come join me in the heavenly realm.
Yes.
And instantly, what pops in my head is, have you seen Monty Python: The Holy Grail?
Yeah, great movie.
Do you remember
Excellent.
the scene? Remember the scene where like God just appears in the clouds and tells King Arthur to go get the grail? Like I would
Yeah.
do that. I would just appear to everyone and say, "Listen, like I'm here. Come join me in heaven. All you have to do is follow my teachings." But
Well, isn't
it
that
seems
funny?
he doesn't do that, right? He
Isn't that funny?
arbitrarily picks some people to respond to he arbitrarily picks some prayers to respond to, and others he completely ignores. It seems more logical to me that in just the same as all throughout history, humans have gone and imagined certain events occurring. And this isn't to downplay your experience. I don't want to. Do
No,
that.
no,
I
I
don't
don't.
wanna
I'm
come
not
off as
taking.
offensive.
Yeah, I don't take any offense.
So
But yeah,
all throughout history, we can visibly see people misinterpreting, seeing phenomenon that like never really happened, but they thought happened. It seems that this is just an extension of the same phenomenon.
well, but so you said, shouldn't God just show up and say, "This, I'm here," and like prove
Yeah,
Himself and
something
do
more
and
obvious.
do like a miracle, right? Or do 100
Yeah,
miracles?
I mean, God, if
get
Jesus could do
resurrected from the
dozens of,
dead.
if Jesus could heal all the lepers, man, he could
Do you
turn the
see-
water to
yeah,
wine.
would you-
God can come down and say, "Hey, Jackson, check it out. Look who I am. Come join me."
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, but listen, okay, so for one, He did, right? That is what Jesus is, and that's why we have a historicity to the Gospels. That's why it can be considered a genuine historical text, because God did do that. He did come down and say, "This is who I am," and did something actually even more insane than just like showing up in the clouds, because he could be like, "Oh, maybe it was a projection or something like that." He raised a physical body from the dead. So that's the belief.
You can't prove that though.
Well, you can't prove it, but you can take the evidence that's presented to us and say, what is the best explanation of the facts? So
Evidence is proof. We don't.
no, evidence is not proof. Evidence is not
Yes.
proof. Evidence. Let's look up the Oxford definition of evidence real quick. Evidence
can't
is not
prove
proof.
your
You
claim
can
without
so the
evidence.
evidence that OJ didn't kill his wife or whatever meant that he didn't kill his wife. Okay, this is the definition of evidence: a thing or set of things helpful in forming a conclusion or judgment, something indicative, an indication or set of indications. This means by which an allegation may be proven, such as an oral testimony, documents, or physical objects. Okay, so evidence is in no way equal to proof.
Well, you need evidence in order to prove.
You
something.
do need evidence in order to prove something, right?
So you can't say something is a proof without its evidence.
Right. And so that's why I'm not even talking about proofs. I'm just talking about the evidence. That's all I left it at. I said that you can take the evidence of the historicity of Jesus and the empty tomb, the veracity with which first century Jews would completely reject what their worldview was, to suddenly adopt this crazy idea that a man, the Messiah, who was supposed to be a political ruler, right, in their like conception, it's because they misread the Old Testament or they just didn't have the full context for it. But he was supposed to be a political Messiah that was going to overthrow Rome, but instead he's crucified by Rome and killed. And then would be the end of the story. Oh, oops, not our Messiah. But then suddenly they have this like voracious belief that this guy was raised from the dead and is God, which is totally blasphemous within the ancient Jewish context. Totally blasphemous. So what's the best explanation of them somehow just completely changing their mind in every single regard, to the extent that they will be burned alive, crucified upside down for hundreds of years?
Right. Well, I guess if you could count that as evidence, then the Quran has copious amounts of evidence for
Yeah, I think
Moses
Quran.
and Allah as God, and so do many ancient Egyptian texts of their gods. I mean, there's no way we can, say that that's more of an evidence than those books are. I don't think you can prove anything with a book. In
Well, yeah,
general.
I mean, again, it's like again, evidence isn't a proof. So it's like, yeah, sure, maybe there is evidence for Allah given the Quran. But then what are the other qualities that God has to have in your like inference of where to place God, where to like know him and learn about him and praise him
If
in the
I
best
could
way.
place Jesus somewhere, I would definitely place him after the 2000s when we could film him. He could be on podcasts. I mean, wouldn't that be a great time for him to
That
be
is an
alive?
interesting point. You would think that that would be true, and in a weird way, because there are so many, like for instance, this and like Ruslan and all these Christian podcasts that of
Yeah.
genuine believers projecting Christ into the world. You would, in a weird way, that actually like is how it played out. Okay, but you're saying like the physical body of Jesus, he would perform a miracle on CNN or something like that, right? Like that would be the
Yeah.
ultimate proof. But then wouldn't
Or he
people
would work
in
with
200 years
scientists
just
of the
say, well,
time.
that was photoshopped or something, you know?
Well, we would have physical evidence, though. I'm sure if we had the current
How? Okay,
scientific
so then what do
ability
you
of
say
the
about
time,
the Shroud
we
of
could
Turin?
prove some of these miracles happened. We
What do
could
you about
document them. I
what
mean,
about
I'm
the
sure they
Shroud of
would be
Turin?
studied at many scientific
I don't really like
institutes.
the Shroud of Turin.
You don't like that? So what's your contention
No.
with the Shroud of Turin?
Um, the fact that it was, oh, what are the there's the three big problems with it. The
Okay.
first one is that it's been dated to be found around the 13th century. The
Okay,
second
but are
problem is
you
that
sure
the
about that? Because what happened? We can look this up, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but
oh Lord, it's been a long time since I've read
okay,
about it. There was like a
okay.
whole bunch of there was
There
like
is a
So
one
more
guy
recent
there was like
study.
one guy that said it came from roughly like 0 BC. Like he was so confident that it was dated around the right time, and then everyone was like, "There's no way that's possible." So they did a whole
yep.
bunch of other independent studies, and it's been like they've been fighting over it all, like pretty much ever since, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
so
like the
the
gist.
famous study from the 90s, which is the one you're talking about, where they were like, it's a hoax. It was created in the 1400s because we did the carbon dating, which is, carbon dating.
Yeah.
That's valid. That's real science. You can't deny carbon dating. But it turns out, what did they date? They dated a corner of the shroud, which had been documented to have been burned in a fire in the 1400s in the monastery that it was in. So the carbon, literally, that they were taking from the shroud was from the 1400s, right? But then
Gotcha.
this year, like within the last 2 years, they dated a different part, like a more authentic, like a middle piece, and they're like, oh shit, it's actually from the year zero. So I can pull up
Gotcha. Yeah.
receipts on that
But
for
no,
you if
I
you
mean,
want.
like, I think that's like the weakest. I think that's the weakest retort against the Shroud of
Sure.
Turin.
What are
I
the
think
other two?
the two
Yeah.
stronger ones is
Yeah.
the weave pattern that was used in it is something that's completely unseen for the time period of
Okay.
the Sumerian area during like the time that Jesus was supposed to be alive. It's a very common like what was it, herringbone pattern that was
Okay.
very common in Europe around the time of the 13th and 14th century. So
Gotcha.
that's again that's not insanely strong evidence, but it's kind of like pointing you in the direction of
Okay.
like it might be fabricated.
Okay.
But I think the strongest piece is that when you look at the Shroud of Turin, you can do this like completely visually. It looks like you've portrayed a 3D image onto a 2D surface,
Yeah.
but that's not. If this was hypothetically a burial shroud that was laid over Jesus, the facial structure should be. I don't know. I forgot the word. It's a description. It's a geometric description where when you want to actually fully plot out a 3D object onto 2D space, you completely distort the object. Like it doesn't even look like the same object that you had originally wanted to paint. And so the problem is that the Shroud of Turin looks exactly like a human.
Like,
But
exactly.
it should look
look
distorted
a
along
little
the
more
edges of him
distorted. Yeah.
because you're portraying a 3D image onto a 2D surface, so it doesn't really
Okay.
track with what logically would follow if you were to do that. And there's been a whole bunch of recreations of like people going,
Yeah.
what if we actually had a human and then imparted their physical likeness onto a piece of cloth, and it looks
Right.
I guess similar in some regards, but you see the obvious distortion that the Shroud of Turin lacks.
Okay, and so how do you deal with the method by which this image was hypothetically produced on the shroud? Like, have you heard about that? Like what the actual image is? Because it's not like
Well, it's just
paint
the
or something. It's yeah.
it's claimed to be like the when God was reviving Jesus, it's like
It's like
the
a
holy
blast
light
of
that emerged
light
from him or
or
whatever,
something
right?
like
That's
that.
the
Yeah.
yeah.
So what is it actually? If it's not that, if it's like some fake, like how did the 14th century monks recreate an atomic blast of light or whatever it is? I mean, because it's my understanding that we still can't create it now, the way like as a blast of light, the way that it actually is, like what those lines are. I mean, again, we'd have to look into this. This is not like my area of expertise, but it's my understanding that they not only definitely could not have created it in the 1400s, but can't even now. Have you heard that objection or?
I heard that the whole can't do it now is kind of it's true, but it's kind of like misleading because I think
Okay.
the reason that it can't be created now is because the exact pigments that were used for that, the plants are long gone. Like they don't even exist anymore.
Oh,
So
so
if we
you're saying
wanted
it
to,
is a
if we wanted
pigment.
to do a traditional experiment where we have a control where we use the exact pigment that was used
Yeah.
hypothetically to make this, we can't even do that. So unfortunately, we can't do the exact same experiment. We can only do substitutes that are as similar as possible.
But it's your understanding that it is a pigment or something. Like it is something that's applied to the cloth.
I mean, unless holy light that God brings down miraculously looks a lot like dried blood, I would think it was.
Well, there would
what
be
it
blood.
seems like to me.
The theory is that
What it
there would
seems
be
like to
blood
me-
and which there is a shitload of blood on the shroud. So that's another question. And it's not like
Yeah,
it's beyond ancient people making a fake to like actually kill a human and put all the blood over it.
No, I think
but
that's
it seems a
ridiculous.
little it seems a
I mean,
little
like
intense.
everyone had statues of Jesus in the 13th and 14th century. I don't think it's ridiculous to us to think that perhaps a very 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 skilled craftsman might have just made it one day.
Okay. I might have to agree to disagree. I don't know all the details about, for instance, like the pigments. It was my general, again, I get all my information from the Mel Gibson, Joe Rogan podcast and a couple other things I saw.
Oh
but
God, I've never.
So-
That's a problem then.
yeah,
Why
exactly.
do you try to use it as a proof then? Or
What's
why
that?
do you assume that it is Jesus?
Well, to me, it's like from my basic understanding, I was just saying that's one thing. I would never say like that's why it hasn't even come up in conversation until now. It's like I would never be like, you don't believe in Jesus? Just look at the Shroud of Turin. But it's like I would say that there's all these remnants in nature and nature itself and in culture and in history and in our like tradition, like our the tradition of the West to see God in all these different places. Like for instance, the reason that they started doing science at all was because they assumed that there was a reasonable order to the universe. The only reason they assume there's a reasonable order to the universe is that there would be a reasonable creator of the universe or something like that, right? So I'm not, again, not a proof for God. I understand you can do science without assuming that God is the creator of the universe. But it's like we have all these little things that seem to me like just pieces of evidence, just like pieces of evidence that you can kind of pick up in the moral realm. You can pick it up in the science realm with like fine tuning. Definitely pick it up in the philosophical realm. You can look around and see the complexity and the order of things and just say, is it more likely that this occurred out of random chance or that it was somehow created like a artist would create a painting? Again, it's like these aren't things that are going to prove to you 100% because you're dead set on the fact that there isn't a God. But to the very open mind,
I've told you this multiple times.
Okay.
I am open to the possibility. There's just nothing that is going to prove that there's a God.
but if you say that, then you're not. That means by definition that you're not open. If you say there's nothing that can prove that there's a God, then you're obviously not open to it. Like for
There's
instance,
nothing in existence currently that can prove that there's a God.
so you just look at the order of nature and like you look out and see how complex and beautifully like constructed everything is, and then your answer is that happened randomly. That's like that's a product of entropy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that again, it's like you can say that, but you're just asserting that. That's not even intuitive. That's not even. Do you see what I mean?
Well, we can prove that it happened. I mean, gradually over time. I mean, by chance.
Sure. But God has all the time in the
Bible
world,
says
so
that
He could do
everything-
whatever He
the Bible
wants.
says that I mean, for example, like the Earth was created before the sun, and we now know that that's not true. I mean,
But Genesis
the
1 is
Earth-
completely allegorical. Genesis 1 is not at all scientific. So I've never claimed, I would never hold that Genesis 1 is a scientific, historical, like in the literal sense, description of life, but of how life was created and the universe. But it definitely has like allegorical value that, like, for instance, the most basic sort of duality is light and dark. So there you go. That's the first thing that's mentioned. Let there be light, right? And then he separated the sky from. Then he separates the waters above from the waters below. Not for. And then you can go into the whole Pajot thing where it's like, well, water actually represents chaos. So that's the
right, but
first
when
ordering
if we
of
read
chaos.
it for what it is, though,
But you can't
it's a
read if you read it
description
for
of
what
how
it
the universe
is
was created.
literally, then it's
And
wrong.
that wait,
Yeah.
let me finish
Yeah.
my
So
point
sorry.
though.
Keep going. Keep going.
That's the theory that Christianity has, the only theory that they have of how the universe was created by God, and it's not enough to even start any sort of study that was actually possible. I mean, he gives completely inaccurate dating of the planet. The order in which things were created was incorrect, and so we're able to disprove that scientifically, and that's the only. I mean, and then of course than the cosmological argument, which we already went over, but
Yeah. But how
like
stupid do you
when we
think
look at
Moses was, who was just like making it up or trying to trick people, that he would give like things happen in different orders between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. So like forget science. Like if science proves like oh, the trees actually came after the animals or whatever it was, whatever science has proven to be disordered about Genesis 1, you don't even need that. You can just read Genesis 1 and then read Genesis 2. And in Genesis 2, we can go into it, but it's like humans were created on the last day. And in Genesis 1, they're created on like the fourth day. Do you see what I mean? So nobody had this understanding that it was literal or that the order was like the thing that the text was trying to transmit. It's trying to transmit a different truth,
right.
an allegorical
Right.
truth, right?
It was written though in this like a story of how the earth was created. I don't see how you can believe that it was otherwise. And since there is that contradiction of when humans were made, isn't it more likely that it was maybe just like a story that's not true and
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not again,
like made up?
true is a weird word because true has such a vast and wide range of possible meanings. So I'll put it, it's not scientific and it's not literal. How about that?
I don't know how you know that though, because it's written in a sense
Because
that it is
that's the genre of the text. That's if you look at any ancient Near East creation story, it's all about allegory. Or also it's like, okay, maybe I don't know that, but I'm
assuming
still
that.
firmly within a tradition where all the people I look up to in the tradition say that. So it's like, then you could be like, well, maybe they're not really Christians or maybe they're not really following the Bible. And then it's like, okay, well, then nobody is. So the whole thing's deconstructed.
Yeah,
Fine.
it's very
Okay, so you could
subjective
say
what
that, but
one
then
means.
I'm just going to say, well, no. I mean,
mean,
there's a way you're allowed to interpret the text.
Yeah, and I can interpret it any way I want. Like,
Agreed. And that's why we come to different
God took out
conclusions, right?
the Amalekites, then my anger against this group of people is justified, and I'm able to take their lives with my own will. And you can interpret it, and you can't tell me I'm wrong because
No.
I can say, oh, well, the text doesn't mean this literally here, but you don't have a way of showing that the text is not literal.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
all I
you're
have
just
to
kind of
do is
assuming because it was treated as if it was literal until it was disproven by Darwin and evolution.
well, for one, it wasn't true. Oh, are you talking about the Amalekites or Genesis?
Oh, no. I'm talking about Genesis.
Okay, for one, I would actually it applies to both. I don't know if we have any reason to believe that it was treated as literal until in the American South when the evangelical fundamentalist movement, which like just went nutso sola scriptura, until they introduced that idea. Like, I don't think there's any historical basis for people reading Genesis 1 in any way other than allegorically. Like, when you're reading the church fathers and even the Talmud and things like that, I just don't think that you can make that claim that everyone thought the earth was literally created. Like, there's already arguments about this in the first century when there's no science. Or maybe, I want to say third century. When there's absolutely no science about that or cosmology or anything. So
Yeah, they didn't have the proofs of it.
yeah, but
that
but
it's
even
not
though they
true,
didn't
but
have the proofs, they
they
are
did.
already saying,
They
"Is
still
this?"
believe the Earth was flat. It was a dome. They believed
Yeah.
the Earth was 6,000 years old, and
But before Jesus ever got onto the scene, the Greeks had already proven that the world was round. So did that shake anybody's faith in Christianity? No, of
it
course
was
not.
still widely believed. I think until like the 13 or 1400s that the Earth was not.
It's my understanding. This is what I learned in
Especially
history,
in the
but
Christian community.
this is what it's my understanding, and then of course there's Copernicus and the heliocentric problem where like the Catholic Church is like, no, that can't be the case. So I'm not saying the church has never like shut down science. I'm not. Of course they have. That would be wrong for me to say and fallacious. But we see arguments. For one, actually, I think it was generally understood amongst Greeks at the time of Christ and before the time of Christ that the earth is round. I mean, this was just proven by, I don't know who, Aristotle or something. But remember the guy who did the experiment where he like, oh, look at the shadow of the Tower of Pisa and then like measure that and then measure a shadow of something way on the other side of Italy. And then they could see that, the shadows were different. So there's like a arc angle and stuff like that. So educated Greeks that became Christians, why would they not have a problem with that? They must have understood that you have to read the... What's that?
Because it was disproven that, I mean, at the time the Bible was written,
Yeah.
There was believed that the earth was that old. I mean, that's how we were created. Moses, or not Moses. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
but
you're
yeah,
good.
like the flood, that was all believed to be true, and until we were able to disprove that scientifically. I mean, that was largely thought to be true.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm not even sure if we disagree really. I guess my point is like it is valid and it's traditionally valid. It's not just my opinion that you are allowed to read scripture either allegorically or metaphorically or all the above. I don't think that's even remotely controversial within the church.
So I could take like the verse of the flood, the great flood, and say that, oh, if I feel this great anger and that everyone is sinning in a terrible way, I can just wipe out this entire population.
Well, no Hebrew would think that, or Christian, because you're not God.
But it's acceptable, right? Because I can
It's
look
acceptable
at the text
for God
in a way that's not literal, and I can say, oh, this is what God's trying to convey, is that our anger is justified when someone is deserving of the anger.
Well, I mean, that is true. Sure, that's a great you're doing that's a great message to take out. Yeah, there is such thing as justified anger. Our anger against the Nazis. I agree. So, yeah, that would be a good allegorical reading of the flood.
Turn the other cheek, so it's like, which one am I supposed to do?
Both. That's what life is, brother. Sometimes it's right to turn the other cheek, and sometimes it's right to have.
Those are two contradictions to the same problem,
They're not necessarily contradictions. They're like more like
they're opposite.
They're different instructions for. That your life is full of these paradoxes. Like even you can feel this even. So like, is it ever right to be angry with someone?
I mean, yeah, it's subjective, but yeah,
sure.
It is sometimes.
Sometimes, so if a Nazi is killing a Jew in front of you, you can be angry at the Nazi at the very least. You can. Okay, right. Is it ever right to turn the other cheek and forgive someone?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so both things can exist. You do that in your life. That's already that's a reality of your. Right. Yeah.
They can both coexist.
Yeah. Okay, so it's actually been, how long have we been going? It's actually 2 hours and 45 minutes. So we are gonna wrap it up now, and I gotta go. So great stuff, guys. Super fun. Love the conversation. Love the 3-on-1 action. Let's get some Christians in here as well to back me up. But the 3-on-1 is good. It's good practice. And
it was a flogging in here.
Yeah, you're right. I did flog you guys pretty hard. No, I'm kidding.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I know. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Let's do it again. Like and subscribe so you can see when these things are going up. But hell yeah.
All right.
Awesome, guys. Take it easy, everybody. Peace and love. Let's all be kind and nice to each other. That means you, Comic Brandon. And I'll see you guys